Please come to order. Good morning. Welcome to the Commissioner of St. Mary's County meeting this date, Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. I am Randy Guy, President Commissioner of St. Mary's County. I'd like to introduce the other commissioners. Sitting to my right, representing the 1st Commissioner District, which includes Bridge, Piney Point, St. George's Island, Mr. Eric Colvin.
Good morning.
Representing the 2nd Commissioner District, which includes Leonardtown, Hollywood, Mr. Mike Hewitt.
Good morning.
Sitting to my left, representing the 3rd Commissioner District, which includes Charlotte Hall, 7th District, Golden Beach, and Mechanicsville, Mr. John O'Connor.
Good morning.
Representing the 4th Commissioner District, which includes Lexington Park, some of California, Great Mills, and some of Hollywood, Mr. Todd Morgan. Dr. Rebecca Bridget, our County Administrator, is sitting at the table to my left.
Good morning.
And Elisa Cassis, our Communications Director, is sitting to the table to my right.
Morning.
Amy Carter, our video media producer, is behind the glass. Nobody ever sees, but she does a lot of hard work for us. Please turn your cell phones off or on vibrate at this time. Please stand and for the invocation and pledge. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gathering we have here before you of the County Commissioner of St. Mary's County to do the people's work in our county. Please bless us with making the right decisions, or at least the best decisions we possibly can. Please get us through this pandemic as quickly as possible. There are many, many people that need to get out and get going. Please inform that we're government higher up than us to help us get through this and get by. Thank you for all the vaccines that's been produced at this time, and may we all get back to some kind of normalcy within the next few months. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay. Next, we need the approval of the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we're going to go into a public hearing, Department of Land Use and Growth Management public hearing, proposed amendment to the official zoning maps of St. Mary's County to delete the existing 1,000-foot critical area boundary line and replace with a new critical area boundary line from the statewide base map as required by House Bill 1253 out of Annapolis. Mr. Bill Hunt is a Director of Land Use Growth Management, will be presenting. Bill, you got it.
Thank you, sir. House Bill 1253, adopted by the General Assembly in 2008, directed the Critical Area Commission to prepare a statewide base map, which includes state-determined shoreline and landward boundary of tidal wetlands and a digitally generated 1,000-foot critical area boundary. Local governments are required to adopt the state-produced map. The revised map of the 1,000-foot boundary is a recognition that mapping technology has substantially improved since the first critical area maps were hand-drawn for inclusion in the Chesapeake Bay Critical Area Protection Program of 1984. Next slide. The critical area includes the waters of the Chesapeake Bay and tributaries to the head of tide and all land under these waters, and next, all land within 1,000 feet of the landward edge of tidal waters and tidal wetlands. Next. The original 1,000-foot critical area boundary was manually drawn using the 1972 tidal wetlands maps. Because they were manually drawn, there are inherent inaccuracies. Next. There have been many changes to the shoreline and wetlands since the first maps were made. There are more accurate ways of identifying wetlands and tidal influences using remote sensing. Electronic, digitally produced maps are the standard now. Next. House Bill 1253 from 2008 required the state to work cooperatively with local governments to update critical area maps. Next. HB 1253 directed the Department of Natural Resources to prepare a statewide base map with the state-determined shoreline. The new boundary line has been drawn using color infrared imaging, LIDAR, new aerial photography, and GIS software. Next. Critical Area Commission staff, the Eastern Shore Regional GIS Cooperative, and Salisbury University GIS staff worked with local governments to make the new boundary line. Field visits were conducted to ground truth aerial photography and color infrared imagery. Next. Here in the Chesapeake Building, the Critical Area Commission held a public information meeting in August of 2018. Property owners with at least a 1% change in the critical area boundary on their property were notified by letter of the change and this meeting with critical area staff. The letter from the critical area staff had photographs of the proposed change on the property. Next. This slide and the next illustrate some of the data that went into the new boundary maps. Next. False color infrared was one of the techniques used in the analysis that went into the new map. Next. Discrepancies and inconsistencies identified in producing the GIS data were reviewed. Historical records were looked at and DNR made field visits. Next. The County GIS Division created an online map for county residents that showed a comparison of where the critical area boundary was on their property under the existing map and where it would be located with the adoption of the new boundary line. These maps were put on the county webpage so residents could look at their properties. Next. The Critical Area Commission responded to residents with questions about the revised boundary. Field verification was done when it was necessary. St. Mary's County, like all local governments in Maryland, must adopt the maps without changes. Next. The request for a public hearing on this amendment was made to the commissioners on February 2nd, 2021. The legal ads were published February 19th and February 26th. March 9th, the end of the public comment period will be over, and the decision is expected on March 16th. Before the public hearing today, comments, questions, phone calls have been received either by the commissioners or by the Department of Land Use and Growth Management from 21 owners. Copies of the questions and the staff responses were provided to the commissioners before this hearing. A few more have been received since that time, and they will be compiled and presented to the commissioners as part of the open record comment period. Most of the questions are regarding how much more property is now in the critical area compared to the earlier map. To answer these questions, I would send copies of the digital images showing the existing critical area and where it's going to be with the new maps. A few owners knew that their property was not in the critical area at one point, and either in 2018 or with the more recent letter, they have now learned that they are in the critical area. These residents typically would ask what that meant to their property, and for that I would send the GIS maps plus some basic information depending upon the content of the question, as well as links to the state web pages by the Critical Area Commission that have a lot of information about the program in its entirety. And that concludes my presentation.
Mr. Hunt, there's been, obviously, as you said, a number of people raising concerns about the reach of this new critical area map. So in a couple instances, it seems that in what I've read, individuals before were not in the critical area, and now they are in the critical area, or portions of their property in the critical area, now they're totally consumed in the critical area. So the questions forthwith become, okay, if I built my house and I was in the critical area, and now you change the map and it puts me in the critical area, what does that do to my rights as a property owner?
The typical answer, without seeing a specific proposal with that, is that the usual impacts are when you make any disturbance within the critical area for new construction, you have to do mitigation that's contained in the ordinance and by state law, which is planting of vegetation, trees and shrubs typically. The other thing that comes into play is lot coverage. There's a percentage of lot coverage allowed, lot coverage being rooftops, driveways, garages, porches, anything that stops water from easily getting to the ground. There's a percentage for that, and if the lot coverage exceeds what's allowed by the law, then you have to seek a variance for that lot coverage that exceeds. Those are the two impacts.
So the gist of it is that the homeowner, through no fault of their own, who had a property that they built on legally, and then the map's going to change because the state is requiring the change, will then probably be unduly penalized and have to go through an extremely costly process of applying for variances, possibly going to the Critical Area Commission, possibly having to go to the appeals board and all this other kind of stuff along the way.
all those things could happen, yes, sir.
Well, I guess, at the end of the day, then the commissioners have to decide, is this fair?
Well, sir, if I could just take a little bit of exception with that, unfortunately, with the way this has come down from the General Assembly, the commissioners of St. Mary's County don't have the ability to make that determination. The state has mandated that the maps as produced by DNR and the critical area staff have to be adopted without changes by the local government. So in essence, they've made that decision and taken it away from you.
So we could look at this again as another joyful reaction of someone who comes from one of the northern counties that doesn't have any water to worry about whatsoever, because things change over time and water levels rise and shorelines change. The rural counties, for the most part, are the ones going to be most penalized by this, whereas somebody who sits up there and say Montgomery County could care less, but they got their environmental X in the box.
Well, I don't know the origin of the,
Well, I don't know where it came from, but I'm just using that as a theoretical example, that it's easy for someone, it's easy for anyone to say, well, this is a good thing for you because it doesn't affect me at the end. And then what's going to be left holding the bank, I believe the five of us are going to be the ones where USOBs did this to us. And really, we had nothing to say, nothing to do. And I feel bad for these numbers of people who have called in addition to people who have called me along the way going, this is crazy. And I'm going, we don't disagree with you.
yes, sir, that's the situation that we're in.
What's the actual date? I mean, I don't know if I missed it, that this has to actually be adopted.
Well, sir, there is a deadline that is required by the state, and I'm within a few weeks of meeting that final deadline. I had to ask for an extension to get this public hearing taken care of, and so we're on a tight deadline to really get this back up to, get it adopted and sent back up to the Critical Area Commission.
So do we know the legal ramifications if we say we're not adopting it?
I do not, sir.
Is somebody from the county attorney's office here that could tell us?
I don't think Neil has that.
And so, of course, we can, if Neil's not prepared to answer that today, we can certainly get that back to the commissioners.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing to tell us that we have to do it, but they can't force us to vote and actually adopt it. There has to be some other recourse. There's always another alternative option, whether that's them coming back down and saying, too bad, we're going to do it anyway. But I just want to know what that option is.
Yes, sir, I don't have that information.
Mr. Hunt, I want to thank you for the work you've done. I mean, it's very important that we reached out to people and said, hey, look, you could be impacted. Now, I think what's the driving force behind this is HB 1253, because I'm on the Critical Areas Commission, and that came to us a couple of years ago. Because of this bill, you need to revisit this issue. And what really is one of the driving things behind it is a change of technology of when this 1,000-foot buffer was put in, and what was the idea of 1,000 feet. So I'm just trying to give you an idea of some of our discussions up there in Crownsville. And the bottom line gets to be is, like Commissioner Morgan said, somebody's installed this on us. So it's great. We're hearing from people, thank God. And hopefully we can give them clarification on how they're impacted. But again, this is another state, comes out of General Assembly. And I don't see anything we can do but follow it. Now, if we want to ignore it, we can ignore it, but people won't be getting their building permits if they don't have their critical areas approvals. And they won't get it if they don't meet these critical area criteria. Now, I agree, it's not fair. Change the rules after all these years. And people who had these lots and were hoping to do something with them, look, we're not the only county that's impacted by this. We've heard it from other counties. So all we can do is make the best of a bad situation. But it's another outreach by the Annapolis to install things on us that they think are good for the whole state. And I'm not sure we have much choice, but you've done good work. Your department's done good work in getting people aware of this, and thank you for that.
Yes, sir, thank you, Mr.
So, Mr. Hunt, I guess this would be up for actually the office of the county attorney. My thing is just because Annapolis did it doesn't mean we have to roll over. And I want to know, what are the legal recourse? Can the county file an injunction? Can the county take further action on the maps? Can the county say, what can the county do on it? Just because there's a law doesn't mean there isn't a recourse for the law that was passed. There always is. That's why we have case law. I mean, that's where it comes from. So I want to get that a legal opinion from the Office of the County Attorney as to what actions we may be able to do to protect our property owners versus just saying Annapolis said so. And if there is no recourse, then we don't have that option to take that. But at least we have an option that the commissioners can look at versus just saying, we got to do what we got to do because they said so. So I want to at least have that option so our property owners and our homeowners and everybody else understands that we're at least looking out for their best interests.
So it seems to me that of all the correspondence I've seen so far from citizens, it breaks down into two categories. People, homeowners who are looking to just better understand what this actually means, which your office has helped them out a lot with that. And then people who realize or soon realize that they will be impacted drastically by it, and they're the ones that are rightfully upset about it. At minimum, I would think we would be able to compile a list of those and send some form of a letter to, I don't know if it's Critical Areas Commission, and ask for some kind of an exemption just coming from this body. Whether or not it has any impact, I'm not sure, but I think that's something we should consider doing going forward, just to try and advocate for our citizens that are impacted unfairly.
Do I understand you to be saying that you would like this list of exemptions to be from the people who have communicated with us, or perhaps a more expansive list of people who, and this is where it gets difficult to determine, I'll say most of the comments that I've received and addressed, there has been some critical area already on the property. Not 100%, but in most cases. So when it increases, however small or however much, it impacts them more than they were impacted before. That list would be a very long one, and it would be not impossible, but it would be difficult to get that information.
I'm not sure how to quantify it, but homeowners who are substantially impacted, and I don't know exactly how that would break down.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, that gives some guidance.
Or could we get some kind of a exemption grandfathering?
Yeah.
Those who own the lots now or have substantial building already, could they be somehow grandfathered from this bill or from this action from here on out? Now, when they sell to somebody, they fall under this bill. But if we can grandfather those who are there now and have substantial buildings and everything, they want to pave the road rather than gravel it and do things like that, why can't they do that? I know they're going to cover up, impervious soil here, but at the same time, rather than going through the process of zoning and everything, can these people be grandfathered that we know? I'm sure we can find it. Who owns the lots now and who has buildings on it now and substantial, especially those that become completely covered now with this new mapping, is somehow grandfather.
If I can comment on that, sir.
Yes, sir.
That is a very doable situation. I'd have to work with the county attorney's office about that to draft the letter for the right wording. But it reminds me, if I may, to the situation that we have with building codes. When new building codes are adopted, when people are in progress with the work that they have, they're not entirely grandfathered, but they get to use the older building code that they started their project under.
Right.
So if people owned property before this new boundary,
Correct.
and we can identify those from the mailing list that we have, those people would be able to use the
Existing code, correct.
That would be
That's
phenomenal.
exactly what I was getting at right there, Mr. Hunt, is thinking outside the box.
Do we do some kind of a grandfathering?
That's exactly what I was getting at. Not just taking it because on face value, but let's see how we can use the law that's already written to work for our residents. That is very important. So thank you. That's a good one.
That we can certainly do.
Okay, work with
Again,
our-
I need the legal guidance, but as far as the physical ability to identify those, we have those through our GIS department.
Okay, well, work with our county attorney and see if our office there and see if we can't at least request something. I don't know if the critical area will listen to us or not, but we do have a set member on it, so.
Thing is, I'm going to tell you, is they get rules, and the rules come from the General Assembly. You know, maybe when a Crosby's bill, if it gets passed, I hope it doesn't, maybe we can ask for a waiver from that. Look,
Well-
it's kind of like once they pass something, buddy.
Well, I know, I suppose it's too bad we'd have better representation back in, when this thing passed,
Whatever. I don't mean to
2008,
go down that road.
2006, I don't know.
My point is I
Anyway.
know when we have these meetings, it's like, look, this is the law. You got to adapt to it. So,
I understand.
but again, we can ask.
Well,
for anything.
see if we can, if there's a possibility, let's just at least try. Let's just try, okay. Anything else, Commissioners?
No.
Okay. Well, with that being said, Dr. Bridget, will you provide the format for the public hearing?
Yes, sir. So for this morning's public hearing, March 2nd, 2021 at 9 a.m., here are the guidelines for the Commissioners of St. Mary's County public hearing for the proposed amendment to the official zoning maps of St. Mary's County to delete the existing 1,000-foot critical area boundary line and replace with the new critical area boundary line from the statewide base map as required by House Bill 1253. If you wish to address the Commissioners, please call 301-475-4200, extension 1234, to provide your name and address for the record. You will then be given an opportunity to speak to the Commissioners through the phone conference. All speakers will be allotted 3 minutes to address the Commissioners. At the end of the 3 minutes, our Communications Director, Elisa Casas, will let you know your time has expired. We ask that you respect the 3-minute time limit in order to give all those who wish to participate an opportunity to be heard. The public hearing is being televised live on St. Mary's County Government TV 95 and the county's YouTube channel. If you should miss any part of the meeting, it will re-air on Channel 95 this Friday, March 5th at approximately 6:30 p.m. and will remain available for on-demand viewing on the St. Mary's County Government YouTube channel. Citizens were provided an opportunity to address the Commissioners via video submissions, but because we did not receive any video submissions for the public hearing, for the Commissioners of St. Mary's County public hearing for the proposed amendment to the official zoning maps of St. Mary's County to delete the existing 1,000-foot critical area boundary line and replace with the new critical area boundary line from the statewide base map as required by House Bill 1253, we will now begin accepting comments through our teleconferencing system. Ms. Casas, do we have any callers?
Good morning, Dr. Bridget. Good morning, Commissioners. We do have some callers this morning. Thank you.
Great.
Good morning. Thank you for calling in to participate in the Commissioners of St. Mary's County public hearing for the Department of Land Use and Growth Management public hearing. The proposed amendment to the official zoning maps of St. Mary's County to delete the existing 1,000-foot critical area boundary line and replace with the new critical area boundary line from the statewide base maps as required by House Bill 1253. Please remember you are allotted 3 minutes to address the Commissioners, and at the end of the 3 minutes, I will let you know your time has expired. Please speak clearly into your phone, state your name and your address for the record, and it is preferred that you speak directly into your phone rather than using the external speaker. This will allow the Commissioners and the public to clearly understand you. Good morning. You may begin your remarks now. Good morning. You're in the public hearing. You may begin your remarks.
They got tired of waiting for us.
Good morning. Is your phone on mute by any chance? We cannot hear you.
Yes, I was on mute.
Okay, there you go. Good morning. Your time will start now. Please begin your remarks.
Yes, good morning. Sharon Drury, 16405 Fisherman Way, Ridge, Maryland. I'm calling in for the Ruth Drury Estates that was divided up in 3 years ago, I believe, is what we did. And when we divided the property up, we made sure we didn't have anything in the critical area. Right now, the new boundary comes into our line, comes into our property. So because we have gone through the process of developing in the critical area, we know that that adds an additional burden to us when we develop the property. I have read all of your, Mr. Hunt's responses to the letters, and it's clear that it looks like to me that I do have to now follow the RCA provisions of the critical area. Luckily, none of the boundary 1,000 foot will be in the where my new home will be. So I assume and I hope that that will still be the case, that I won't be impacted too much as long as I don't develop anything within that 1,000 foot boundary. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks.
Public Hearing Call Center.
Good morning, Julie. This is Elisa Casas. I'm calling to see if we have any other public comments through our teleconference line for the Commissioner's public hearing for the Department of Land Use and Growth Management today.
We do not.
Thank you, Julie. Dr. Bridget, Commissioners, we have no more callers on our teleconference line this morning.
Thank you, Mrs. Casas. Commissioner President Guy, Commissioners, this concludes our public hearing. Please note that the public comment period will remain open for 7 days until close of business on March 9th. Should the public wish to send an email to csmc@stmarysmd.com or U.S. mail to P.O. Box 653, Leonardtown, Maryland 20650. Commissioner President Guy, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Bridget. Bill, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for the comments you gave me a few days ago, and it definitely satisfied the few people that I was talking to.
Thank you, sir.
And I appreciate the answers you gave to everybody so far, and you're probably going to get more questions yet. We've got a couple of weeks, of course. So thank you very much.
Commissioner President, I'd like to offer the following motion, that the Board of Commissioners direct our staff to write a letter to the Critical Areas Commission requesting clarification on grandfathering of existing lots that fall into this
New mapping.
new mapping, but have an effective date of April 1, 2021, because that's when we have to have our maps updated to the Critical Areas Commission. So that's true, right, Bill? I know.
It's early April, so I don't know. the
Yeah, I know,
exact
it's
date.
April 1st. Yeah. Anyway, because
Okay.
we made a
So-
motion about that. at
But before
Critical
April 1st, okay.
But we
Is
read a
everybody
letter
agreeing?
as a commissioner board requesting clarification and grandfathering. So we
Okay.
can tell people like Ms. Drury, you're okay.
I understand.
That's a motion.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Mr. Hunt, though, you're, in that letter, you shouldn't take any action until the Office of the County Attorney does their legal research, so it can come from the Office of the County Attorney.
Yes, sir.
So it needs to come from them. It needs to be written by them, because there's all sorts of legal aspects.
Is that amendment to the motion? The motion
No,
said
the letter will still be signed by the commissioners, but
comes from the county.
it
Well-
needs to go through the legal review first.
Come to the county commissioners, but you'll be reviewing it with county attorney and everything. Yeah, that's normal. That's normal process. Right, Dr. Bridget? That's normal.
Yes,
Yeah, okay,
it's
fine.
reviewed by legal before it comes
Sure,
back to the Commissioners.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hunt. Thank you.
But we are under a deadline.
Pardon me, sir?
We are under deadline. We got 29 days.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have a couple of proclamations. The first one's for Women's History Month, 2021.
Okay, this proclamation, this proclamation will be given to the St. Mary's County Commission for Women. Whereas women across our great land have helped make our country stronger and better by improving our communities and playing a vital role in achieving justice and equal rights for all our citizens. And whereas women continue to strengthen our nation, our state, and our county, and the world at large by excelling as leaders in all walks of life, including technology, engineering, mathematics, business, law, politics, family life, education, community service, science, medicine, and the arts. And whereas the brave women who wear the uniform of the United States Armed Forces are helping to lay the foundation of peace and freedom for generations to come. And whereas the purpose of women's history is not to idealize women, but to collect and share stories of women's achievements that present an expanded view of the complexity of living a full and purposeful life. And whereas the 2021 Women's History Month theme is Valiant Women of the Year, Valiant Women of the Vote, honoring the brave women who fought to win suffragette rights for women and for the women who continue to fight for the voting rights of others. Now, therefore, we, the Commissioners of St. Mary's County, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2021 Women's History Month. We call upon all citizens of St. Mary's County to observe this month through the appropriate ceremonies and activities, and to remember throughout the year the many contributions made by women in this county, in the state of Maryland, and in the United States.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Next, we have another proclamation here.
2008.
That was Commissioner Hewitt, by the way.
Mr. Hewitt, I'm sorry. And I think you're going to give this one, Eric. You got it.
So this is a proclamation for National Developmental Disability Awareness Month. And this proclamation will be given to the Director of Human Resources, the Commission on People with Disabilities, and to the Therapeutic Recreation Coordinator for the Recreation and Parks Department. This proclamation reads, whereas in 1987, President Ronald Reagan made a public proclamation that the month of March should be recognized as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month to increase public awareness of the needs and potential of Americans with developmental disabilities, whereas people with a developmental disability are of all racial, ethnic, educational, social, and economic backgrounds, and all are valued members of society who find fulfillment living everyday lives. And whereas we value what is important to people with developmental disabilities and their families who are striving for everyday lives no different than that of all other citizens, and highlight the importance of inclusion and living life side by side. Whereas all individuals should be given the opportunity to participate entirely and equally in the social and economic life in St. Mary's County. Now, therefore, we, the Commissioners of St. Mary's County, do hereby proclaim March 2021 as National Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, and urge citizens of St. Mary's County to observe this month with appropriate programs and activities that reaffirm our dedication to create opportunities and accessibility for people with disabilities. This date, March 2nd, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Colvin.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a presentation from Lisa Cassis about our Communications Director for Electric Vehicle Charging Station virtual ribbon cutting.
Thank you, Commissioner Guy.
In November 2019, the Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative, SMECO, contacted St. Mary's County government and asked for recommendations for 20 potential locations in St. Mary's County for electrical vehicle, EV, charging stations to be installed by SMECO. There will be 60 EV stations throughout Southern Maryland over the next 4 years. Working with our community partners in government, education, and nonprofit entities, the Commissioners of St. Mary's County on December 10, 2019, approved the recommended 20 potential locations and 3 alternative locations for EV installation throughout the county. The exciting announcement of our first EV charging station at the new Leonardtown Library and Garvey Senior Activity Center in January of this year is the culmination of the work of many. St. Mary's County Departments of Aging and Human Services, Information Technology, Public Works and Transportation, as well as the library and SMECO. We thank the St. Mary's County Commissioners for their support of this project. Congratulations, SMECO. This site is the first of several sites expected to be completed over the next several months, including EV charging stations at St. Mary's College, the town of Leonardtown, St. Mary's Public Schools, school administrative offices, and the Charlotte Hall Library. Although the charging stations are placed at many government buildings, all those in St. Mary's County will benefit from the reduction in carbon emissions and cleaner air. The SMECO EV Recharge Program is easy for residents and visitors to our buildings, restaurants, parks, and historic sites. We congratulate SMECO as this is a great example of St. Mary's County partners working together to promote the use of efficient and sustainable resources for electric power on our roads.
I'm Commissioner President Randy Guy. Welcome to the virtual ribbon cutting ceremony for the electric vehicle charging station at the Leonardtown Library. In August of 2020, the Commissioners signed a right-of-way agreement granting SMECO access to the Leonardtown Library and Garvey Senior Activity Center property for construction of this electronic vehicle charging station. Today, we recognize the partnership and celebrate the advancement of sustainability practices in St. Mary's County. This project is the first of many proposed electric vehicle charging sites planned for St. Mary's County. On behalf of the Commissioner of St. Mary's County, we celebrate this special occasion and invite residents and visitors to make use of this amenity.
Hello, I'm John Dietrich, Director of Public Works and Transportation for St. Mary's County. Our department constructs and maintains the buildings that the Commissioners of St. Mary's County own. I'm very pleased to be part of this virtual ribbon cutting for the electrical vehicle charging station. I look forward to watching people charge the vehicles at the new station and knowing that they will be part of keeping the air in St. Mary's County cleaner.
Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative is committed to the protection and preservation of natural resources. We work to develop new sources of renewable energy and continue to add wind and solar to our power portfolio. Environmental leadership involves making responsible investments that benefit the environment while meeting the needs of our SMECO members.
At SMECO, we are committed to enhancing the quality of life in Southern Maryland, and we are committed to environmental stewardship. We're demonstrating our commitment to the environment and our members by installing electric vehicle charging stations throughout Southern Maryland. We're proud to commission our first SMECO EV Recharge charging station here at the St. Mary's County Public Library in Leonardtown.
Hello, I'm Michael Blackwell, Director of St. Mary's County Library, and I'm here at the site of the first public electrical vehicle charging station in St. Mary's County. Thank you so much to the county and to SMECO for working with the library to put this in. It's at our Leonardtown Library location. The library is designed to celebrate our historic past and honor our technological present and the promise that it brings for the future. This ability to use cars far more efficiently is something that the library is very proud to be a part of. Thank you. Come on out and use this.
Commissioners?
Next, we go right into legislation. The Office of the County Attorney, presented by Mr. Neil Murphy, Deputy County Attorney. Welcome, sir.
And Commissioners, just to note, Sonia Cox, the President and CEO from SMECO, also joined you WebEx during your virtual ribbon cutting. Thank you, Ms. Cox.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Cox.
Dr. Bridger, is there a charge for hooking up to that? Someone have to pay for that electricity when they hook up to their cars over there?
Yes.
Yes, so
Not free.
Ms.
It's a credit card swipe.
So, Ms.
The answer to my question, but I just wanted to hear it in public. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions for Ms. Cox while she's on the phone?
Well, I guess the rhetorical question, how much is what is the cost to charge a vehicle? I mean, you pay, because $50 to fill a gas tank. What's the charge? What would be a cost to charge an electric vehicle?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
This is Sonia Cox. It's two different rates for the level 1 charger, which is what is at the Leonardtown Library in downtown Leonardtown, which takes a couple hours to charge up. It's 18 cents a kilowatt hour. in 2 hours, I think when we were there the other day, we had it charged for about 5 minutes or so, and it was 11 cents. So it's certainly not comparable with gas prices. The level 2 DC fast chargers will do a full charge in about 20 minutes, and those are more expensive. I believe they're about 55 cents a kilowatt hour. It's the same rate throughout the state. We charge Pepco and BGE all have the same rate. So any charger that you go to that's part of this public charging station infrastructure, you would pay the same rate.
Thank you.
Ms. Cox, I wanted to give you a little bit of information. I have a Sheetz down in Lexington Park, and Sheetz is getting ready to demolish that location and build a new one. And what they're going to do, they're going to take half the gasoline pumps out, and they're going to replace them with electric charging stations. And the idea is that when you pull up, you'll have your electric charging station, and you'll plug in there, but you'll go inside and have something to eat because they're going to have a sit-down restaurant. But their goal is to capture some of this electric car market, charging market too. So let's see what the commercial side does it, and maybe you guys can be a little bit cheaper and more cost-effective for the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioners? Okay, well, Neil, it's up to you now. You got it.
Thank you, Commissioners. And I'd just like to let you know that we'll be working with LUGM in answering your questions regarding the Critical Area Commission and doing the research that you requested, as well as working with them to provide the letter for the Commission.
Put your mic a little closer to you.
Certainly.
Yeah, please.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'll take off one of my masks. Perfect.
That'd be good. Yeah, take some of the mask off. There you go.
Sure. So good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So Mr. Weiskopf is not here, as you noticed this morning, so I'll be covering the legislative update for him. And everybody should have received the memorandum, or memoranda, I suppose, since there was a second one that was provided later concerning this week's legislative updates. And I'll just go through them one by one, answering your questions as they come. So to begin, there's on the first memorandum, it's the HB 1137, SB 887, property tax credit for business entities during the state of emergency. This particular bill provides an optional tax credit given the evolving coronavirus pandemic to businesses that have been affected by the state of emergency. Chris Castellanos, Director of Economic Development, was requesting a letter of support, which was provided in your packets. And to give an overview of this bill, it provides an optional tax credit, as I stated, and to certain businesses for their real property as well as personal property that are owned or leased by those businesses. And MACO supports this bill as well, particularly given that unlike some of the tax credits or exemptions that are mandated by the state, this one provides that it is not only optional, but it allows the commissioners to set the amount of the tax rate as well as its duration. So there's a lot of autonomy that is embedded within this bill, and for that reason, MACO supports it as well. Obviously, they anticipate, or MACO anticipates, as well as the fiscal note anticipates revenue and expenditures, or expenditures to go up, revenues to go down, obviously, because it's providing a tax credit, but that would vary, obviously, based on the amount and duration of the tax credit.
I think, Neil, the important thing to recognize here is MACO did support this bill for one reason. That is that the counties have the option to choose what they want to be able to do.
Absolutely.
So while the law may go into effect, there's nothing that exempts or supports the county commissioners, council people, executives, whatever, to do anything about it at the end of the day. There is a large fiscal note to this in the tunes of millions of dollars of lost revenue by definition, but the only definition is if you choose to accept it.
Absolutely, and that was the key emphasis, is that it is an optional tax credit, which provides for both, as Commissioner Morgan was saying, for both the duration and the amount of the tax credit. So the fiscal impact to the county would be based upon what the commissioners
It'd be up to
decide.
us, right?
What would be the point of the bill? You're trying to help out like hotels or restaurants or?
Sure, it would be any businesses that would have been affected by the pandemic. So, as we all know, a lot of businesses have had to close their doors for
Months at a time.
exactly. So to be to offset some of their costs,
So I like.
but providing a tax credit, sure.
I like the broad approach of this bill, but just to clarify, we have to get permission from Annapolis if we want to give a property tax credit
No,
to
what the bill will do
businesses.
is it's like this one we just played with.
Right.
The law would pass. At that point in time, the ability to give the credit is solely at the discretion of the county commissioners.
Right.
You don't have to go back to Annapolis and ask for permission. You can decide to do it, not do it,
But
do it.
without this bill, we have to ask for permission, is my question.
That I don't know the answer to.
Probably can't do it, right?
That's exactly right, Commissioner
Without the
Healy.
bill, it can't do it. So I think
That's
that
just weird.
it would be like case by case. I mean, if you had a situation, I definitely wouldn't give it to Target or Walmart or Lowe's.
I don't know if I don't remember. This is a long discussion in the tax policy committee as to how it breaks down specifically. I don't know if you can make it local businesses or chains, et cetera, but it just gives us the ability. The bill's going to pass. So let's put that on this side over here. Then it becomes, once it passes, what is going to be the discretion of the commissioners to give whoever, whatever, the ability to do it. And I think the details will be worked out once you decide what the cost of the credit is going to be to our revenues, is what it boils down to.
We determine the percentage that we want to apply. Yeah.
But I guess, can you do it on a case by case basis?
I don't remember that part of the discussion.
Okay.
I don't think you have to do it at all.
No, I guess my point is,
Yeah.
is that you hear from a lot of merchants and restaurants, they're just treading water, trying to,
True.
slowly starving to death.
So this gives us the option.
Get through this pandemic and hoping for but they're getting hit by higher unemployment taxes and,
Like I said, it's a huge fiscal note, depending on how the state chooses to do it, just like the decision yesterday was made that unemployment benefits are not going to be taxable. So that's a hit to revenue on our side because
and they're not going to be taxable.
not going to be taxable.
A good idea in a way, but.
Well, the question is, let's stick to this bill.
Yeah,
and we'll be able to part later. So I'm going to support the bill. I move to support HB 1137, SB 887, property tax credit business entities, state of emergency, and to approve and authorize Commissioner President Guy to sign letters of support to the House and Senate committees for hearings on the bill.
Second. Well, a lot of seconds.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
And even though the motion has passed, I would like to note to Commissioner Hewitt's point is that the commissioners, or the bill authorizes the commissioners to set any additional criteria if necessary. So you would be able to, I suppose, exempt certain businesses, like as you mentioned, Lowe's or Target, some of the larger businesses only apply to some of the smaller ones. So for that reason, as I stated, there's a lot of autonomy that's delegated to the commissioners to see to have it work best for the local jurisdiction.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then next is HB 1050 tax sales notices. So each spring, I believe there's the tax sales that for properties that have not paid their taxes. And as part of this, there are two more or less pre and post notice that happen. So you have to provide notice before the tax sale to the property owner, and notice after the tax sale, after the property's been sold, to tell them how to basically get their property back once it's been sold. What this bill does is it mandates that not only are you sending these notices to the property owner or the person or the company that last appears on the tax rolls, but you also have to send that notice to any lien holder or anyone who holds any remaining life interest in the life estate on the property. So that means that there's not only the person who owns it, but then two additional categories of people. And what the impact of this is that it requires for every tax sale, and as you know, there are many tax sales throughout the county each year. For each tax sale, it requires a title search. And For that reason, given the expenditures of the title search, and not only that, but also the mailings that are required in the publications, there's significant impact financially to the counties. And the fiscal note states that for Charles County, for instance, Charles County estimates that this would cost them about $200,000, these additional title searches, because they often require you to use an outside third-party company to perform the title searches. So there's the expenditures on that, as well as I said, the mailings and printing costs as well, which are obviously less than the title search itself. As another comparison, for a slightly larger county would be Frederick County, and they estimate their costs annually to be $378,000 per year for these tax sales to perform the title searches. And for that reason, Christy Kelly, the treasurer, is requesting a letter of opposition given the significant increase in cost in performing these tax sales.
And Mako opposed this bill also.
And that's actually absolutely right. Mako also opposed. Thank you, Commissioner Guy, for pointing that out.
Tell me, how long does it take for someone to get to tax sales? Is it like a 6-month process, or?
So
I've seen, things on internet that say, hey, look, they're taking my house after 3 months or after 4 months. I mean, it takes a lot longer than that.
It takes some time. So there's you have to provide notice at least 30 days in advance, and then, well, there's a number of times that you have to not pay your taxes. I don't believe that you can just not pay them once and then they can take your house. But the exact procedure and the length of time, I'm not exactly certain on.
Thank you.
I can research that for you, Commissioner Hewitt, if you would like.
I don't think I think it's like a 6-month, 8-month, it's a lengthy process.
It's quite a long time, that's exactly right. So I know that we instituted a tax sale just recently, and I believe it is around the 6-month mark from when the initial notices go out before you can even file a complaint. So it's quite a lengthy process as well.
People impacted have time to react.
Exactly, that's exactly right, yeah.
Thank you.
And even if we wanted to foreclose the right of redemption, so to prevent them from getting their property back, that's even longer as well, once it's been sold.
I move to oppose House Bill 1050 tax sales notices and to approve and authorize the Commission President to sign letters of opposition to the House and Senate committees for this bill.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next is SB 602, HB 701, the Tort Claims Act, which increases the limits on liability under both the Maryland Tort Claims Act as well as the Local Government Tort Claims Act. What this does is, so as a brief history, there was an increase in the limits on liability in 2015, which raised them nearly double to about $400,000 for an individual claim and $800,000 for a total claim. But what this bill does in the 2021 session is raised it from $400,000 for an individual claim to $600,000, and then from a total claim of $800,000 to $1.2 million for total claims. And it also increases, so all of this applies to employees that act in their scope of employment, so local employees. But what also happens under this bill is that there are separate limits on liability if the actions are committed by a police officer. So it removes the caps for economic damages. So for example, lost wages, medical bills, things like that. And for non-economic damages, it increases that amount that I previously mentioned by $15,000 every year for individual claims, and for total claims, $30,000. Mako opposes this bill because they see as, while this bill was introduced sort of as they describe it as a part of a wave of police reform, the impacts are far greater as it affects local governments, and obviously the claims that occur or are incurred against local governments are not necessarily just police claims. Therefore, a number of things. So this exposes or increases the limits on liability to counties for any number of claims that would be under the Local Government Tort Claims Act. And so they see it as, or they oppose it for a number of reasons. It increases our premiums for one, but also the judgment awards. And interestingly, Legit noticed or pointed out and I think it's in the fiscal note, that when there was the 2015 increase that nearly doubled the amount, they saw an increase in claims from 2015 to 2020 by 40%. So not only increases the exposure, but also the number of claims that sometimes happen, because as they saw it, litigants would pursue sometimes what they considered to be, I think the fiscal note described it as like, quote, marginal claims that wouldn't probably get a large settlement, but there's enough that there's risk to the county that they would, the county would want to settle to avoid litigation. And again, MACO opposes this bill for the reasons stated.
Well,
You don't have to do anything.
I think we should oppose it.
I think the hearing's already been held.
Has the hearing it's already been held, the hearing?
So it was heard, so yes, that's exactly right. So the hearing was in the Senate was on February 4th, and in the House it was on the 10th.
Okay.
Because the rest of the bill, he's just giving us updates on.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the homeowner's property tax credit, the eligibility of a surviving family member. MACO opposed this bill. It passed the House and it's in the Senate, so it's crossed over already. And what this does is alters the eligibility of homeowners' property tax credit to allow certain surviving family members to obtain a tax credit based on levels of income and the amount of the home as well. But that tax credit expires if that family member transfers their dwelling. And as I said, it's crossed over already. And then let's see. Next one, and this was on memo number 2, the most recent one that was sent. This concerns HB 655, the local government commissioner elections and district voting. So it's already passed. I know the commissioners are familiar with this. It's passed the second reading already with amendments. However, although the commissioners requested Delegate Morgan introduced 2 amendments, both of those failed. The first of which was the referendum, which was discussed, I believe, at the last legislative session. And then the second one was for the amendment to allow the voters to vote at large, or basically to remove district lines. And again, both of those failed. So it's going to third reader this week. We tried to find out before the hearing this morning, or not hearing, the commissioners meeting this morning as to what date it exactly would be in third reading. But we weren't able to find, but we can find that information if the commissioners want. And then it'll go obviously to the Senate if it passes. And then most recently, the Garrett County introduced, the Ways and Means Committee introduced an amendment which did pass that also expands this legislation to the Board of Education. And that includes St. Mary's County as well.
Do you know if there's a Senate sponsor for this bill?
I don't, and I don't think it's been cross-filed as far as I know.
It hasn't been cross-filed, and there's no Senate sponsor at this time.
Thank you,
I
Commissioner.
think the third vote on this is this week.
That's exactly right. That's what Telegra Crosby said.
Yeah. It should be noted, too, that while in the basis of this bill has been rooted in multiple ways, if you watch the hearings, they've excluded the larger counties that have charter government from having to vote by district. And they failed to incorporate municipal governments from having to vote by district as well. So they've excluded the major players in all of it from this bill when it was supposed to be posed as a total election reform. However, that's not the case. So I just figured, since you were already adding the amendments, they tried to push those and it was struck. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. And then finally, for this week's legislative update is HB 528, our repeal of the impact fee and in transition to a building excise tax. So this was heard on 2/16, and it received a favorable report by the Environment and Transportation Committee, but there have been no amendments so far. And I believe that concludes the legislative update.
Thank you very much. Anybody got any questions?
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Have a great rest of your week.
Likewise.
Sir.
Okay, next we need a motion to adjourn as county commissioners and
Move to adjourn as county commissioners and reconvene as the Board of Health.
Second.
have first, second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Make it happen. And good morning, Dr. Bruce, our presenter, our health officer for St. Mary's County.
How are y'all?
Welcome.
I think this is the first time I haven't seen you in person, not in scrubs and with extensive PPE on.
Since I wore a suit.
Yeah, I know.
No mass vaccine clinic today. Great. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you again for your time.
Morning.
So we have a full agenda for you today, and I'll start out by giving an update on the COVID pandemic, as usual. And then we'll transition, and we have some wonderful guests joining us for our Board of Health meeting this morning later with an update on a concept we'd like to present and talk with you about a behavioral health hub. Go to the next. All right. So COVID-19, we're reaching our 1-year anniversary almost of our local state of emergency.
Wow-wee.
Yeah, definitely. We have thus far, if you want to click on the link for the data. Right. So we're at 5,931 cases as of yesterday morning. That's nearly 45% of our population has been tested at least once. If you go down to the new case rate graph, which is below, a little further down. A little further down. Right there, yeah. And then if you wouldn't mind, Elisa, moving over to the side, Ms. Casas. There's a bar underneath, if you could scroll it over. And you can see the trend. So as I've hinted at the last meeting, we do seem to be emerging from that surge that we've had over the past couple months, which is encouraging, very encouraging. However, we have plateaued in the past couple weeks. This is similar to trends seen around the state and nationally as well. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But our new case rate currently, as of yesterday, was 19.5. And again, these are new cases happening within 24 hours per 100,000 population. And that's a 7-day rolling average that we reflect here locally. The RT estimate, I know Commissioner Morgan, you like that one, if you go down. Thank you, Ms. Casas. If you could roll it over, again, the scroll bar on the bottom. And as we've talked about before, I know Commissioner Morgan, we've had some good discussion on this. The RT is an estimate. It's an estimate based on one model. Right now, it's sitting around 1. Again, this is an estimate. There is a high degree of uncertainty with this estimate because it takes certain assumptions into consideration. So we have to be cautious with how we apply the RT estimate. It does have a confidence interval. This is so statistically, when you report a number, you also report a range of numbers to indicate how confident you are about the number you're actually reporting. And because of the graph and the contractor with the graph that we have for here, we're not able to show the full confidence interval for every of these data points. But the confidence interval is pretty wide. It ranges from anywhere less than 0.5 to up to 2. So just so you're aware that that is, that does also indicate some uncertainty in this particular estimate. If you go down to, let's go to hospitalizations, the graph right there, a little bit above. And if you could scroll that over, please. Thank you. And again, as we've been emerging from the surge in terms of cases, we've also seen that reflected in terms of hospitalizations of St. Mary's County residents. And again, this is for hospitalizations in any Maryland or other state hospital that reports in the Maryland system. It does not include federal facilities like NIH or the Veterans Administration hospitals. And then if we go a little further down to the fatalities. All right, so thus far, since the pandemic started, less than a year for us in terms of when our first death and a resident occurred in the county. We've now lost 114 St. Mary's County residents to COVID-related disease. And in our long-term care facilities, if we move down further, right here, thank you. In our long-term care facilities, we actually are now with active outbreak status only at one of the 3 long-term care facilities in the county, which is a good movement forward from when I last talked with you. Charlotte Hall Veterans Home is the only one right now with active outbreak status.
Dr. Brewster, the 114 deaths you just mentioned, how many of them are over 70 years old?
If you go up to the chart for the numbers, this is the age distribution of fatalities right here. And so you can see we've had 10 fatalities in the less than 70 population. There definitely has been an increase in that over the past couple months with the surge. But the vast
We have
majority.
104 of those are over 70?
I'm sorry?
104 over 70?
Well, this is based on the St. Mary's County residents that have passed, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Now, if you go back up to the graph of new cases by week, that was that bar graph. Sorry to send you all over the page. Thank you. I think this should be it. So, as I was mentioning before, we are making pretty good progress in emerging or leaving the surge behind. But again, in the past couple weeks, we have seen to plateau in those new cases. And while the recovery is encouraging, this is a time where we're still encouraging everybody to be vigilant about the mask wearing and social distancing from non-household members, and being careful as they make travel plans and so forth if they are going to be traveling, to be particularly careful in those situations. It's really important for people to have a well-fitted face covering, and in a situation where they have a looser cloth face covering, sometimes it can be helpful to wear a procedure mask underneath it, like what I'm doing here today. And that'll help maintain that fit. Again, we're making progress, but we are concerned about virus variants that are emerging around the country, and the potential for those virus variants to lead to a 4th surge in this pandemic. And we've been making great progress on getting vaccines into arms. And right now, it's a little bit of a race between vaccines and these emerging variants. So we really need our residents to maintain these precautions from COVID-19, so we don't end up in a situation where we're succumbing to these viral variants. To try to get a better understanding of the different COVID-19 virus variants that are present in Maryland, the state is actually sending some of the nose swabs that people get when they get tested for COVID-19. They're sending them to different labs, and within their own lab are doing genomic analysis. And what that does is it allows them to identify in that sampling of, they don't do it for every sample, they do it for a selection of samples, a small number of samples. But from those small numbers of samples that are being analyzed, they may be able to determine if there is the presence of those variant viruses that we're concerned about. We have in Maryland detected the UK variant virus, the South African variant virus, as well as the Brazilian, most recently, variant virus.
And Dr. Brewster, where were those found?
The variant viruses? So they've been identified from the countries that they're named by, so
I get that, but I mean,
No, but where in Maryland were they identified?
Okay, so there have been a few that have been reported. I don't have any reports of variants being identified from samples in St. Mary's County. I don't have the full distribution. There's about maybe 70 UK cases that have been identified.
Thank you.
They may have that on the state website. I don't know if they give it by geographic location. I'd have to check.
Dr. Brewster, let me interrupt you just for a second. I've had people say to me, hey, look, I tested positive for this thing whenever, da-da-da. Never felt anything. We all know about asymptomatic, this and that. But the point is, what is the reliability of the testing? Now, we're hearing about Pfizer's like 95% effective against the vaccine's effective, and, Johnson 66 and this. It's like all over the board. But what is the effectivity, or is it in the 90s for, what's the term? False positives or false negatives for tests?
So are you talking about the vaccine or the test?
No, I'm talking about the test.
Okay, so the tests aren't necessarily Pfizer or Moderna. They come from
Oh, no,
other
no, I know
companies?
that part, but I'm just using their analogy
Oh, I
of
see.
90,
Okay.
95, and 66 and all that
Sure,
business.
sure.
What is the test 100% accurate?
So no test that we know of is really 100% accurate for that uses PCR testing. The PCR actually, as you know, there's two tests that we commonly use to diagnose current infection. There's a PCR test that is the more reliable test, and that actually looks
Takes
for.
us 5 to 7 days to get you.
Actually, we've been getting results back within 36, 48 hours, and so it's been pretty quick. When it's a big surge like what we experienced before, there's a lot of post-holiday travel, people getting tested. We have seen some delays at the labs, but definitely the lab capacities have improved over the past several months, and right now we're getting our test results, at least the health department ones, within a couple of days. So that PCR testing is fairly reliable. I don't have a hard number for you. I mean, some of this depends on if somebody's getting tested when they're asymptomatic or symptomatic, and what day of their asymptomatic period or day of their symptomatic period they're getting tested. But for the most part, if the viral marker is there, right, that's what the PCR test is looking for. If the viral marker is there, the PCR test will pick it up. Usually, though, a few days after the body has been brewing the virus. So if somebody gets tested on day after they just got exposed to the virus, their test might be negative, and they might need another 3, 4, 5 days before their test turns out positive, even if they've been asymptomatic the whole time. So it depends on when in the process.
They tested positive, but other members in their family tested negative.
Yeah, and that's possible.
And it's like, how maybe I wasn't positive is what they're trying to say.
Sure. Well, they may have, I don't know if they've gotten rapid antigen testing, but the antigen testing is the one that we're really concerned about, with actually both false positives as well as false negatives, although our concern about false negatives is really greater with the antigen test, meaning that somebody tests negative, but they're actually really infected, and the test falsely said that they were not infected.
But you don't know the percentages.
So the antigen test, early estimates were indicating up to 30% even, maybe even more, of false negatives. Again, the reliability of that test it depends upon if you get tested when you're having symptoms versus when you're not having symptoms. And then when along your infection, like what time along your infection you're actually getting tested. That does influence how reliable the antigen test is. That's why there's a state order and there's also a local order that says that if somebody is getting an antigen test, because there's so much concern about the reliability of these tests, if somebody's getting an antigen test, they should get a confirmatory PCR test. Yes, the PCR test, which is really what we consider the gold standard for testing for COVID-19.
What's all that contact tracing that goes on that, you tested positive and you didn't think anything was wrong, I don't feel anything, but now you got to call your friends that you've been around, or you got to notice places you've been around,
Sure.
and those people have to quarantine. It's just this spider effect of when
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of how the past several months have been, right? I mean, we have community spread throughout our community. So even if you're in a household, while somebody else in your household, for whatever reason, may not have actually gotten infected, somebody else that you run into or spend some time nearby in a grocery store, for example, could become infected from the air that you're breathing. And that's why it's so important for us to be wearing our masks outside of our household especially, and then maintaining social distance as best as we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
So really with this, again, I was just trying to describe that there are some efforts at the state level to take some of these nose testing swabs and at least some of them get them sampled or get them analyzed for different variant viruses. If you go to the next slide, please, back in the slide set. What we're doing here locally, and we just announced this by press release this morning, is, if you recall, commissioners, back in the spring, we partnered with Metcom, St. Mary's College of Maryland, as well as some of the other wastewater treatment plants here in the county, to begin analyzing our local wastewater for the presence of COVID-19 virus. So now we have taken this a step further. Actually, back in February, we started sending some of these samples that the college is actually analyzing to see if there's just generally presence of virus. We're now sending those samples to a genomics lab up the road to be analyzed to see if there's any variant viruses present in our wastewater here in St. Mary's County. This is a kind of cutting edge type of approach to identifying variant viruses. So some of the labs are still setting up their protocols and are a little slow in the analysis. So we have not received any results back yet from the samples that we've sent up, but we do expect within the next couple weeks to start getting some results. As those results come in, we'll post them on our St. Mary's County Health Department website.
What's taking so long? Didn't we start this some time ago?
So they have protocols. So we're sending them essentially raw sewage, right, wastewater.
I understand.
They have to pasteurize the samples. They have to extract and this picture here shows you what they do in the lab just to identify virus first, even before they do the genomic analysis. So we send them the sewage and samples that are collected in the specific specimen tubes. In the lab, they're pasteurized, so they're not risking the people who are working in the labs to potential viral exposure. And then they're processed to start start identifying viral particles. Then the viral particles have to go to special machineries and people who are trained to do what's called genomic analysis. They actually look more in depth at the molecules that make up, the building blocks that make up the virus to identify how that virus is programmed and what kind of strain that virus is. Because every virus has its own alphabet, so to speak, and that alphabet is describing what kind of strain it is of that COVID-19 virus. So that process takes a while. This is a new thing to do genomic analysis of wastewater. So some labs just don't have protocols that are that have been working for months and people that have gotten really efficient at it, or even the machinery that's necessary for it. And so that's why there's some of the delay there, is because we're waiting for them to set up their protocols. They're a little bit more familiar now with doing genomic analysis of the nasal swabs, like the state's sending them. But there's not many places that are doing genomic analysis of wastewater to see for COVID-19 variants, so it's a different process that they have to utilize.
Now, once we identify this problem within the wastewater, what does this give us as a county?
Absolutely. Well, it's similar to what we had when we had started this project. We knew that wastewater can be an early indicator before we start seeing impact in our test results of COVID-19. That's why we wanted to monitor our wastewater, because what we learned from other communities is that when their wastewater suggested COVID-19 or a rise or spike of COVID-19 viral load in their wastewater, that might predict a surge or a spike a couple weeks down the road in the community in terms of people getting test results back that are positive. So then it allows us to prepare our healthcare resources. It allows us to potentially alert communities that they may be more interested in getting tested at that point, even if they're asymptomatic. And like I said, it allows us to prepare our healthcare resources for potential surges down the road. Right now, the program of doing genomic analysis on nasal samples, right, the tests that people get for COVID, it's very limited. There's a very small percentage of those samples that are being checked for that are having their genomes checked for the virus variant. And so this will give us another way to detect the presence of those virus variants here in St. Mary's County, so that we can better prepare our workforce, including our healthcare workforce resources, and make sure our residents are aware as well. Because there is a concern with these viral variants as being more contagious and potentially even leading to more severe illness.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. All right, if we can go to the next, please. Excellent, thank you. And just as a reminder to our residents, all of our information for vaccine and COVID-19 vaccine in terms of a variety of questions people have about COVID-19 vaccine and how we're administering COVID-19 vaccine here locally. All of that's available on this webpage here at the St. Mary's County Health Department website. We did more recently, if you go to the next slide, move into Phase 1C. And we were in Phase 1C in terms of doing the general population. We had started off Phase 1C by offering vaccine to individuals 65 years old and older. So that was how we transitioned to Phase 1C. We held off on doing the occupational groups that are eligible for Phase 1C, and I'll go through those in a moment. But really, just recently, we announced that we opened up our vaccine clinic appointments to those occupational groups, which I'll go through in a moment. Here on this slide, it summarizes who in the general population is eligible for COVID-19 vaccine. And again, our focus is getting our seniors protected, and we are still prioritizing our seniors as best as we can in various ways. Also eligible under Phase 1C are individuals who are 16 and older who have some type of developmental or intellectual disability. And we have begun vaccinating a variety of individuals who have cognitive disabilities that live in group home settings. We've already worked with a variety of our partner organizations to get that done. Lastly, there's a lot of questions that have been coming out about people who have immune-compromised conditions that are less than age 65. Right now, the people who are eligible in Phase 1C who have an immune-compromised conditions like the ones that I've listed here on this slide, that are between the ages of 16 and 64, are eligible for vaccine through a hospital-based provider. They are not eligible for vaccine through local health department clinics or through non-hospital-based providers. So the state—
So they have to go to their doctor or hospital to get this vaccine?
Correct. And sometimes their physician or nurse practitioner or physician assistant may not have the understanding of the specific eligibility, and we're working to try to get that message across. But really just for the general public to understand, and this information is all on our webpage as well, if they are receiving hospital-based care, that means that they're hospitalized in the hospital, or they are going to a hospital, for example, for chemotherapy, then they are eligible in Phase 1C. If they are not receiving hospital-based care, they are eligible in Phase 2, and we have not yet reached Phase 2.
Okay.
All right? And again, if they are eligible because they're receiving hospital-based care, they would need to go through a hospital-based provider. MedStar St. Mary's Hospital is working on a mechanism. It's not yet available, but they are working on a mechanism to make sure the needs of these individuals who qualify in Phase 1C are addressed.
Yeah.
So Dr. Brewster, when MedStar Hospital gets this program going, I'm guessing that then the East Run Center of Great Mills Road would be able to be an applicable place to administer shots?
I don't know the answer to that yet. I've had some conversations with Dr. Michaels about what they plan. Most of the hospitals that are administering this are administering it directly through the hospital facility rather than an outpatient
Thank
setting.
you.
Mm-hmm.
So the urgent cares wouldn't apply?
Not necessarily. It depends on how the hospital decides to roll out their mechanism.
Do you know if our VA centers down here, the CBOCs, are administering the vaccine now?
That's a great question.
I understand
do
through
not.
VA they are, but I don't know.
Yes, I know VA Central they are. I'm not sure about the CBOC. I'll find out, though.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One other question. Do you have any idea about the percentage of over 65 that,
Yes, actually, thank you.
that we may have that have already received the vaccine?
Yes, thank you. That's a great intro. If we could go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
Let me talk about these, just
Sure.
kind of reference
Sure.
it. And again, for the people who are watching, they don't need to memorize all this because it is all available on our website. But just so, just to lay it out here, again, Phase 1A occupations, that's what we started with. Phase 1B occupations, which included our public school system, and Phase 1C occupations that we've started with more recently. In fact, many of these individuals are going to get their vaccine for the first time this week. And again, it includes, farming, grocery store workers, not restaurants yet. Restaurants are included in Phase 2. But grocery store workers, farmers, clergy, critical manufacturing, all of that. We do have a survey available on our website, and that survey will allow businesses to determine whether they are eligible under Phase 1C. So I encourage, again, people to go to that webpage to complete that.
Now tell me, I was asked this healthcare other. I got a question the other day from a lady who owns a hair cutting salon, and her point was she is in healthcare, because people need to feel good about the way they look. And
So that would be qualified more as personal services, under all the healthcare other refers to more, there may be individuals who are giving acupuncture or massage therapy, so forth, that might be eligible.
Mean by that?
Yeah, they usually have some, or they have, there's a lot of evidence to suggest also that massage therapy is effective and acupuncture is effective, but they may not have seen themselves fitting into the category of Phase 1A when we had it available.
Her argument was mental health, but just healthcare others was kind of a...
Yes, yeah. If they have questions about it, we encourage them to complete our survey, and we'd be happy to talk with them. So, if you can go to the next slide, please. And so this goes to your question, Commissioner Guy, about who's getting vaccinated. So we are, I'm really pleased by the interest in vaccine that's been expressed thus far across our seniors especially. So in the 65 to 74 age group, about 62% of St. Mary's County residents who fit that age category have received at least their first dose, and about almost 37% have received their second. And are completely vaccinated. In that 75 and older age group, 63% of St. Mary's County residents who fit that age category have received their first dose of vaccine, and almost 50% have received their second dose and are completely vaccinated. And the numbers across the top describe how many residents in St. Mary's County have received their first dose. We have almost 18,000 residents have received at least one dose. And then of the residents who've received two, it's almost 13,000 there. The first dose number reflects almost 16% of our St. Mary's County estimated population. The latter two numbers are actually the numbers of vaccines administered through the Health Department partnership that's been administering vaccines. So we've now administered, as a collaborative, we've administered about 25,000 vaccine doses now thus far in our county.
Dr. Brewster, the numbers for St. Mary's County residents, does this take into account St. Mary's County residents who on the base who have been vaccinated through the base?
It does. The state numbers do not take into account the base numbers. We do, because we collect the data from them directly. Thank you for asking.
Tell me, we're hearing from seniors who want the senior center open, and their point is, hey, look, we've had both vaccines. We're willing to wear a mask. Are they protected? Are these people, I know the governor's order says no to that.
Sure. And I think the senior centers, obviously, that's an area of gathering and a gathering of our most vulnerable population, and that's why it was so critical early on to prevent the gatherings of our most vulnerable populations, and that's why the senior centers were closed. If people are fully vaccinated, we are very confident in these vaccines that it's going to prevent severe infection or infection that leads to symptoms even, or infection that leads people in hospitals or that leads to death. We're very, very confident that that's that 95% number that you've been hearing about with the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine. It's 95% in preventing symptomatic infection. What we don't have an answer to is how effective are these vaccines in preventing silent infection. So somebody could still get infected, not have symptoms of the infection, but could still pass the infection on to others. And again, that's a reason why it's so important to wear masks in face coverings in public or in places where you're interacting with others outside your household. So because we don't have the answer to that question yet, we do know, or we're starting to realize, at least the early data suggests, that these vaccines are somewhat effective in preventing even silent infection. What we don't know is the actual, how confident are we in that, and what's the number, what's the percentage?
Does that mean it's still not safe to open them? Is that what I'm asking you? Is it still
I'm sorry,
not
say
safe?
that again? It's still not safe to?
Is it still not safe to open the senior centers to people who have been vaccinated with both vaccines, both doses, whatever? And
I do think we're not quarantining people who are within 3 months of having had their second dose, have no symptoms, even if they're a close contact. And we're doing that because we're assuming and are very confident in the effectiveness of these vaccines. What we don't know yet is the protection offered, how long does the protection that these how long does it last, right? So you could open up a senior center, for example, and, would somebody only be able to come for a few months until they hit we don't really know the answer to that yet. So I think that's why there's a lot of hesitancy, especially in a setting like a senior center, to invite back gatherings of people who are the ones that we're most concerned about being vulnerable. That is something that might be considered. I know different states are looking at different paths forward. I know the governor has a press conference today at 1 o'clock as well, so if they make that decision at the state level, we'll certainly look at that here locally. I think like I said before, we have to be really cautious. We only have, it's just about 16% of our population that's received one dose.
So still too early, you think?
Yeah, it's still a little early, yes. If we don't know about silent infection. There's this concern about the variant viruses that are emerging and how effective are these vaccines against the variant viruses. We think they're effective, but we don't know for sure yet because we're just learning about these new virus variants. We are concerned about the transmission of silent infection. So all these questions, I think, still gives us pause, and it's still a time to be particularly concerned about gathering.
Again, we hear probably the same argument for seniors wanting to open senior centers as parents wanting schools open.
Sure.
It's the mental health of the individual who's been stuck inside. It's
totally understand.
the idea we want to get out and exercise if we can. And
right.
Okay, so at this point, it's premature to ask for a relaxation of the restrictions.
At this point, just as, like I said before, we're in a bit of a race of vaccine versus variants, and we don't want to get into a place where societies are hitting the fourth surge. Yeah, so we do need to be cautious about how we move forward.
But yet we have better than almost 50% of our seniors have been vaccinated with both.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful.
That's
yes.
great. That's tremendous. Well, one of the things we have, I've been getting a lot of calls too from seniors. And the problem is that they're looking at the Garvey Leonardtown Library. Leonardtown Library opens up on the 8th of March.
Yeah.
So you can go through the front door, you go left and go to the library as a senior, but you can't go to the right to the senior center.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are pretty
you're right. The
very
rationale
concerned
behind
about that is, what is this?
Right.
I've gotten my shots now, and I feel good, and I'll do my distancing, I'll wear my mask and all this.
And we are starting to allow in long-term care facilities that don't have outbreaks, starting to allow certain types of visitation.
Right, we just started letting them in there too now.
So I would just recommend people tune into the governor's press conference at 1 o'clock today, and there may be some changes ahead, but again, at this time, it's really important to be cautious moving forward because we don't know the answers to several questions.
We need to start moving forward on opening things up. It's been a year, and people are really, it's
But we also don't want to hit a fourth surge when we're just seeing some hope from these vaccine efforts.
We also need to practice the caution and everything. I understand all
Agreed, yeah. Thank you. If you can move to the next one.
Dr. Brewster, one of the concerns I have is actually vaccine-based discrimination. All right, and the reason I bring this up is we just kind of brought about it, and if we open up a facility for those that got a vaccine and those that don't get a vaccine, we're discriminating against a class of people. It's the same thing for women that are breastfeeding or want to have children in the future. Doctors are recommending not to get the vaccine if you're breastfeeding. So their providers are recommending that. So to have policies in place that restrict the free movement of employees or citizens based on vaccines and doctor recommended things moves into a discriminatory nature. So I want to be very careful that as we're moving forward in opening, that we're not setting this line of you have the vaccine or you don't. And if you don't, you're literally discriminating against people for not choosing to get the vaccine or not being able to get it.
Right, and some people may have a medical condition that prevents them from being able to access vaccines.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And we haven't reached, the so-called herd immunity that's protective for our whole population. We do know that we have continuing community spread. We're concerned about the plateauing that we've seen in the last couple weeks, like I was describing earlier. So again, all reasons for caution moving forward.
Yeah. I just don't think a woman should have to choose between reproduction and a vaccine or travel, you know?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the problem.
and to that point, you know, again, these are vaccines that are under emergency use authorization. They've had strong clinical trials, but it is still fairly early in some of this, and some of these trials did not involve patients who were pregnant, and so we don't believe, based on the science, that there would be any harm to a pregnant woman or her baby if they get vaccinated with these vaccines that we currently have approved through the emergency use authorization. That's
And I'm
what we
sure
are
we got a
recommending.
percentage out there that just don't trust the vaccine. Sure.
Understandably
And I talked to an
so.
individual just the
Sure.
other day. I asked if he got his vaccination yet, and he said, "No, I'm afraid of a needle. Nobody's going to stick a needle in me."
Well, there you go.
I said, "My gosh, what?"
And, yeah, I mean, just general, you know, and
that's-
you're going to
that's
listen to your doctor,
That's
you
what
know.
you're going to deal
They'll
with.
get a
yeah.
needle if they get hospitalized, most likely.
You're right, right, exactly.
You know, each doctor, I guess, has their own feelings on it,
Sure,
an OB
yeah.
or
And we encourage individuals, and at our mass vaccine site, for any woman who's pregnant, we require them to bring documentation from their healthcare provider that says, that's not necessarily permission, they don't need to get permission, it's their choice. However,
Need to talk to
they need to document that they've had a conversation with their healthcare
Correct.
provider, yes,
Yeah,
to explore
Dr.
the
Brewster,
pros
most
and
of the
cons.
seniors who reached out to me are not in the childbearing age. They've matriculated through that stage of their lives. And, you know, again, they're back to like, you know, I just got an email now, hey, I got my vaccines, I got my card, you know, hey, turn me loose. You know, let me, people have
Yeah.
just got this fatigue that needs to be.
Understood, yes, understood. But again, 16% of the population does not mean we've
with
protected
you.
everybody, and there's still several questions we have
It's
remaining.
still a little early. That's
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for everyone for being patient. So this next slide talks about some of the racial and ethnic distribution of the vaccines administered for St. Mary's County residents. Of the vaccines that have been administered to St. Mary's County residents, the first doses, about 11% have gone to those who identify as Black or African American. And then about 1.5% in terms of ethnicity have gone to those who identify as Hispanic. And the point of showing this is because early on in the COVID pandemic, we recognized that there were significant disparities affecting racial minorities, in particular Black and African American residents and Hispanic residents, that in terms of disease diagnosis, in terms of disease illness, severity of illness, and in terms of death. We've seen that all around the country, and that makes us especially concerned when we're not even hitting our typical demographic percentages in terms of vaccine for African American residents and for Hispanics. We know our county has, you know, any year, you know, 15 to 18% of our population identify as Black or African American, and then near 5% or so of our population identifies as Hispanic. And so this is something we're definitely very closely looking at. You know, those are just the demographics of our county population. But if you look at the burden of disease, COVID disease, and across the country, it's much higher. And so we want to make sure that we are having equitable access to vaccines, and that we're addressing vaccine hesitancy in all racial ethnic groups in our county, including our minority groups that have been most impacted by the pandemic.
This is St. Mary's County, right? You're talking
This
about
is our
here.
St. Mary's County residents,
It looks
yes.
like it's pretty equitable.
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Go ahead.
I'm under the impression the county is about 21% African American, and you're saying that only 10% of those,
Almost 11% so far.
50% of the African American population has been vaccinated? That seems a little low, doesn't it?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's a little low compared to what we would expect based on our population demographics.
Would you put that out for reasons like transportation and access to the vaccine, or would you?
There's a variety of reasons that could be contributing to it. Actually, if you go to the next slide, we're exploring those reasons and addressing them through this new campaign that we've rolled out called Get Out the Vax. It's a partnership between the Health Department, the Minority Outreach Coalition, and the local NAACP chapter. Commissioner Morgan, you had raised this concern some weeks ago, and I think had mentioned or hinted that there was some partnership developing. So this is a consequence from those early conversations.
And I think it's great what you're doing, that's to get out the vax and get people knowledgeable. But Based on your last chart, it appears that you've given out, the health department's given out about 80% of the vaccines across the county so far, just the rough math.
Sure.
So I got a text from CVS just to say, get the vaccines, they're all coming in.
Yeah.
So I've watched the news, the business reports the last couple of days, and you got the Moderna, the Pfizer, now the Johnson & Johnson. We're thankfully getting a whole bunch of Johnson & Johnson down here, I think this week, if I'm correct.
Yeah, we'll be getting 300 doses.
Okay, so we're getting doses. So then based upon the relationship the feds and the state have with Walgreens and CVS, I think they're getting a lot of doses now too. I could be totally wrong. So to get out the vax, and we talk about the fact that we've concentrated our distribution at the health department, or at the Hollywood Firehouse, when the CVSs and the Walgreens all start getting vaccines, will those people be able to then just get to Walgreens or CVS to get the vaccine versus having to worry about getting up to the Hollywood Firehouse?
So, right, I mean, if there are CVSs and Walgreens currently, and Giant currently giving vaccine in our county, people, the way those systems have structured their registration, it's not the same registration that the state uses for its local health departments. It's its own system. Everyone has their own system. You have to go, it's usually a statewide system. There's usually you're waiting for several hours in a queue in order to get to a waiting list, and then there's a waiting list, and then you get connected to vaccine appointments. So if they are eligible in Phase 1C, right, if they're in Phase 1C, they can go to those providers to get vaccine. We don't control that process.
But that part I get. I'm inferring the fact that we're getting the vaccines are starting to become more prevalent, and they're getting out there, that the citizens should know that the CVSs and Walgreens are
There's
now
other
an opportunity
mechanisms.
to get there, and they shouldn't just have to say, okay, if I can't get the Hollywood Firehouse to your system, there are alternatives out there to take advantage of.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for saying that. And hopefully there'll be more options as well. I mean, we just opened up, recently the state opened up the Southern Maryland Regional Mass Vaccine Site at the Blue Crab Stadium. It is a little further for our residents, obviously, to go out of county, but that may be another venue. They can sign up for those appointments on the state website, and we have a link to that state website on our local health department webpage as well.
What I'm hoping is that the Walgreens and the CVSs on Great Mills Road will have the vaccines available for the population down there to be able to get to
Right, more
easier
easily, yes.
than having to get the Hollywood
Yeah,
Firehouse.
and you raise a great point, and we actually have also been very keen on making sure that there's access to individuals who live in Great Mills, Lexington Park, because that is our most densely populated area, and also that's where that has the greatest representation of minority residents as well in our county. And some of what we'll be discussing later, I think, will tie into making vaccine accessible in that region of the county.
And that's the reason I ask about the East Cooper Medical Center on Great Mills Road, so I can conceivably, in a soon world, East Cooper, CVS, Walgreens, all on Great Mills Road to be places to administer those shots.
Potentially. I don't know if East Run has the interest in being a vaccine provider. And the primary care offices across the state, if they have interest, they have to go through and make sure their systems are communicating with certain data systems. They have to show that they have the refrigeration or freezer capacity to store, because a lot of these vaccines are very technical.
Correct.
With the new J&J vaccine, it'll be much easier to store. So that might make it much easier as that supply becomes available. It might make it easier for doctors' offices to start carrying vaccine.
Good.
I think, and just to add, we always look at the high level. Oh, is it transportation? Is it, accessibility? But really, I think learning from some of our partners throughout the state, i.e. Prince George's, who their health department's doing a major outreach up there, it's more of the fear of the vaccine and the rumors and innuendos about it. They found that most people believe that the vaccine is actually going to be like a genocide tool where you eliminate people. There's so many different rumors, sterilization. In that community that they don't want to get the vaccine because they don't trust the vaccine and they don't trust the system that's there. So overcoming that's going to be difficult. They've done a great job so far, but even with the mass vaccination sites and the sites up there, they're still way below the percentage. And they're doing the canvassing, speaking to people about it. And that's usually the responses that they're getting. I don't know if it's something we could do to reach out to the faith-based community here. I know First Baptist Church of Glen Arden has, in Calvert, amazing. Pastor Jenkins up in Prince George's is amazing too, and they one and the same. So he's really out there. And then I don't know if St. Mary's County can advertise the same as the rest is on 95.5, 92.3, 102.3.
Great idea.
To go ahead and hit that same, because those are the radio stations for the morning drive that you're seeing going back and forth. And some of them do extend. I think you can get 102.3 down in the park. When I lived down there, I used to be able to get it.
Yeah.
But not 95.5. I think you lose that about mid-county.
Yeah.
But either way, I think that may be a good path to do, getting rid of the rumors and what the vaccine can really do.
And they have reached out and made use of some vaccine advocates and champions,
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
leaders.
Right, and
But
you
whatever
mentioned
we can do.
faith-based, and we, as clergy opens up, right, because clergy is part of Phase 1C, so that just became eligible. We just, one of our vaccine champions, Reverend McClanahan, was vaccinated recently, and I know he's very well regarded in our community, and we hope other members of the faith-based community also step forward and get vaccinated and serve as a messenger for their congregants.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr.
But
Bruce,
great ideas. Is it
think
okay if I just address a little bit more what Commissioner O'Connor was mentioning? You mentioned the outreach, the ground outreach, and so that's where this partnership has been really effective. So the Minority Outreach Coalition, they have essentially community health workers who are going out into neighborhoods, who are talking to people, who are getting people information, accurate information, who are talking to them about their beliefs and really getting them the correct information so that they can make a more informed decision about whether they want to get vaccine. And then they're getting them signed up into callback lists, like if they're seniors, for example, they're getting them on the list with the Department of Aging. They might even assist them in registering for vaccine appointments, and they're even working out a mechanism to assist them if they don't have transportation to the vaccine site, they'll drive them to the vaccine site. So this is a really great partnership that I think will make a difference. We just started it out. We launched there was actually a forum this past Saturday with the NAACP and the Minority Outreach Coalition to talk about a lot of the questions that people have related to vaccine, and that is on the local NAACP chapter Facebook page as well as the Health Department Facebook page.
The only thing I want to mention, and you kind of alluded to it, is that supply has not been meeting the demand. And what we've been hearing is people so frustrated with trying to make an appointment to get a vaccination. So the good news is there's more people getting vaccinated, so there'll hopefully be less people applying. But I love this idea of get out the vax, get your vaccine. How's it working out with the appointments, people being able,
Sure.
we're here, you open it up and it's full in 9 minutes.
Yeah,
You
well,
open-
that hasn't been happening. Yeah, so we posted, the past couple weekends, we've posted, and the appointments have been open for a couple of days. So
Great.
we posted Saturday at 4 p.m., and we still had appointments available most of the day yesterday.
Good.
And so I think, that's encouraging because we know people are getting vaccinated, but it also means that we need to do a better job of trying to reach the people who are eligible, who have not yet scheduled, and address whatever questions they have about vaccine so that they can make a decision.
I tell you, my wife and I got our second ones last Wednesday, and what I was really impressed with, obviously the efficiency of the service. You're doing a great job with that. But how short the line was. I mean, there was only like 6 people, and it was very, very quick and very easy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, we have a great planning, logistics, operations, safety team, and some really great people working together across many different organizations to make that happen. So, thanks.
One more. All right, the Johnson & Johnson. All right, I've had some conversations with some people in the community, some that have spoken to their doctors, and some of their doctors and people in the community have a fear of the Johnson & Johnson because it's basically what they said is Johnson & Johnson used the adenovirus vector, the same one that they used for Ebola, and then using that same vector without multiple doses because of antibodies being at 40%. How can they use the same adenovirus vector for Ebola that they're using for this in
Yeah.
covering the same thing. Mind you, I'm taking multiple conversations and then with a medical professional and taking the layman's and putting it
Right.
into with their words, so.
Yeah, and I think, there's pros and cons to different vaccine mechanisms. We're, in the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, we're using the mRNA technology for the first time. It's technology that we've known about, we've studied it for decades, but we haven't used it in vaccines before. But it's been remarkably effective, and we view them as a medical breakthrough, really, when it comes to vaccine technology. The adenovirus platform that the J&J vaccine uses is also something that's been studied for quite some time and studied for the purpose of vaccine. And more recently, it was rolled out for vaccine that really helped address Ebola outbreak and of course, our pandemic that we're always concerned about with Ebola, and has been shown to be really effective for that as well. And so they use that same technology, right? Not in the same way, but it's the same technology. They used it for this. And what it essentially is the adenovirus is like the virus that gives you, some common cold symptoms or pink eye, right? That's a common one. This does not actually have adenovirus in it that will make you sick or cause infection or give you pink eye. So the J&J vaccine won't give you those symptoms. It's basically acting like a Trojan horse. It's carrying into your body when you get vaccinated the same spike protein that the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines target. And so that spike protein that's being carried on this platform, this Trojan horse, is then teaching your body how to recognize that spike protein if the actual COVID virus comes along, so that your body is prepared to fight it. The J&J vaccine, the data that we've now been able to see since they've gotten their emergency use authorization has been incredibly effective. I mean, there's really strong results coming out of those trials as well in terms of effectiveness at preventing moderate or severe COVID-19 infection, preventing hospitalizations, and preventing fatalities. And so those are the outcomes we want. We don't want to see people get hospitalized because of COVID-19. We don't want to see our residents die because of COVID-19. And so at this point in time, we've got 3 great options for vaccines. The benefit of the J&J vaccine is it's a single dose, it's a technology that we've used in another vaccine before, so some people might like that better. But we've got 3 excellent options, and I would encourage anyone, if they have access to a vaccine and they're ready to get vaccine, just take what you can get, because the 3 vaccines are great options.
Yeah, so, and just to lower the fear on it, the adenovirus vaccines, what are some similar ones? I mean, is it similar to like a flu vaccine or?
So the flu vaccine is a little bit different. It doesn't use the adenovirus platform.
Okay.
And it's made differently. They use, they kind of monitor what kind of strains of the flu are circulating the year before, and then they build a vaccine, using egg culture and so forth for that. But the J&J vaccine uses this platform, again, similar to what they use for the Ebola vaccine.
Gotcha. I'm sure that'll actually help with some of the messaging,
Yeah,
because most of it was, I don't want to get Ebola.
Thanks for raising it. Yes. Nobody wants to get Ebola.
So
You don't want to
Dr.
get COVID either.
Rightfully so, our focus for the past year has been on COVID, but all of the other public health issues that you deal with have still been ongoing.
Yes.
We mentioned the flu, and I realized the other day that really haven't heard about the flu being a problem this year, probably due to a lot more people getting flu shots, and we're all masked up and social distancing.
Yes.
But have we seen any issues with it in the county, or are there any other health issues we need to really be focused on?
So we're always concerned about various types of public health issues, including our chronic diseases and infections. But you're right. I mean, flu, we've been really pleased by how less of an issue influenza has been this year. And again, due to all that you just described, everybody's using a lot of these protective measures. They're washing their hands more often. They're masking and staying socially distant. But yes, I mean, all these other health issues and concerns that the public have continue on, and we're continuing to address them. And if people want to tune in to what various efforts are for these different public health issues, I'd encourage them to tune into our communications through the health department, but then also through our local health improvement coalition, our Healthy St. Mary's partnership at healthystmarys.com. All right, we're going to move on to the last part here and wrap up, and thank you. And I'd like to invite up Sheriff Cameron and Superintendent Smith, who are both here to join and on behalf of the Equity Task Force, and we'll be coming in front of you in a couple weeks to give you more of a report out about the Equity Task Force, but we wanted to introduce this concept of a behavioral health hub that I think could be incredibly meaningful for our county here in the community. And then later on, after we introduce the concept, Mr. Dennis Nicholson, the Executive Director of the Housing Authority for St. Mary's County, along with Mr. Chris Rocky, who's the Senior Vice President of the Territory Executive of the Retail National Expansion Market for PNC Bank, has very generously driven down to our county to be with us here today and to talk a little bit about an incredible possibility and partnership with PNC Bank that may support our county. Go to the next slide, please. So just to introduce, and I'm sure Sheriff Cameron and Dr. Smith will talk more about this, but one of the things, since we started the Equity Task Force here this past summer, we recognize our focus was to try to improve outcomes in each of our three sectors, in the sectors of health, public safety, and education. That's our focus. And as we focused on equitable outcomes and ensuring that those outcomes are benefiting all residents in our county, we recognize that some of the barriers to equity in health, public safety, and education overlap in this one area of behavioral health. That behavioral health seems to really influence the outcomes that each of us are able to achieve in our own sectors. So from the health perspective, for sure, we have seen in our county in particular higher utilization of the emergency department for mental health reasons than even statewide averages. We do know that mental health and substance use, collectively behavioral health, have a significant impact on chronic disease outcomes, on general well-being, on infectious disease, on so many other health issues. And Commissioner Colvin, you had mentioned before, we're continuing to deal with those other health issues. And so that's why we're particularly interested in addressing the gaps in behavioral health services that we have here locally, because we know it doesn't just improve outcomes related to behavioral health, it improves outcomes related to so many other health conditions that are concerning to our residents.
Commissioners, I would just note that we have a significant dedication of Sheriff's Office resources when it comes to mental health. We certainly intersect with our other partners. We see in our detention center about 60% of our inmates that participate in mental health programs and counseling as a result of drugs, alcohol, or trauma, or all the above. And in the enforcement world, we see, I think last year we were close to 900 emergency medical petitions. Typically, those people are either as a result of a drug overdose or as a result of mental health crisis. So we see that every day we respond to some person or persons in mental health crisis, either an attempt suicide or suicide attempts, or suicides are down so far this year. But it is a significant demand on our resources as far as responding to persons in mental health crisis. And the one place that we take them is to the ED at St. Mary's MedStar.
Yeah. And then also in education, and again, we've talked about the school-based health centers as well as being a meaningful area for behavioral health.
And certainly, this has been a very productive conversation and partnership throughout. But when we look at the St. Mary's County Public School Systems, and you have over 17,000 children enrolled, which means that you've got over 30,000 parents raising these children, one of the things that we're really looking at is adverse childhood experiences, and adverse childhood experiences include your parents being involved with drugs or crime or interactions with law enforcement that might lead up to incarceration. So the extent to which we can partner and provide support and work with parents and families, the better we're able to meet the needs of our children, the whole child.
Thank you. If you move to the next slide, please, Ms. Casas. So really, in the conversations and the, collaborative think that we've been having through the Equity Task Force and our interest in improving outcomes in each of our sectors, but then, of course, improving outcomes for our whole community and making sure other outcomes are improved, outcomes related to education and housing and employment and so forth, that we all recognized a need to address the gaps, as I mentioned, in behavioral health services in this community. And what can we do better to address the underlying behavioral health reasons that may be contributing to other poor health, education, or challenges in public safety that individuals may experience. And so that's why we recognize that behavioral health crisis stabilization services is a big gap in the Southern Maryland region and in many areas across the state, but certainly in the Southern Maryland region. When a family is in crisis or when a loved one needs help, behavioral health help, sometimes it's hard to get that help, and it's hard to get that help in the moment that they are ready for that help. They may have wait lists, they may have not know where to go. There may be other things in their life that they need to stabilize so that they can address the underlying substance use or the underlying mental health concerns that they have. And because people don't know where to go and these problems don't get addressed right away and they don't get linked into recovery supports, then you end up seeing these poor outcomes when it comes to each of our three sectors. And so what we were envisioning is a behavioral health crisis stabilization center where individuals can bring their loved ones or where somebody can bring themselves, where our partners can refer clients and their patients so that they can get stabilized originally in a setting that doesn't require medical stabilization, but in a setting where they can get assessed and evaluated for what types of behavioral health support they need, where they can actually have somebody address many of the other factors in their life that might be affecting their ability to get care. And then also where they can get linked into all the different types of behavioral health providers that we have here in the community to get their ongoing behavioral health treatment needs met. And so that's the concept of crisis stabilization. You usually have a 24/7 type of call system that's ready to respond. You might even have a mobile unit that goes out into the community to address a crisis as it's occurring. And then you also have a space where people can come in who are ready, and in that moment they're ready and they're able to get linked into the services that they need in their community. There's some other additional kind of jail diversion efforts that fit in with delivering crisis stabilization services in an integrated way.
For instance, would be law enforcement assisted diversion, specific to our heroin use in the community and the interactions of law enforcement. Instead of incarcerating, getting somebody into treatment right away without delay. And that's a work in progress now.
Yeah. We've also talked about, in the past, potentially having day reporting services as well in the community. And as we explore the potential ways we could do that in a partnership type of way, I think what we're calling a behavioral health hub would be a great potential home for something like that.
In the future, that would allow us to leverage the personnel that we have in that center. Mm-hmm. Instead of having three separate entities that redundancies of doctors and staff, we would leverage that all in one. Yeah. I think we've talked about the day reporting center and the benefits of that, both financially and to people that need treatment, not necessarily treatment while being incarcerated, more appropriate, but that's more of a future initiative. Mm-hmm.
And while we're there in that center, like I said, it's really important to address the critical needs that people have for daily life, their housing, their employment, vocational training, their ability to self-manage their chronic illnesses. And so that's where we would envision a space where all of our services could be integrated, delivered most efficiently, and it becomes a hub of behavioral health service and associated service for individuals and their families who need it. So I'm going to...
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting that you have this here because I've been working with Mr. Walker and some community groups in order to get a mobile crisis intervention team. There's several counties that use it, and based on, law enforcement out, they have an interaction with somebody, and let's say it's a notification because there's a death in the family. Well, law enforcement is somewhat equipped to deal with that, but not the ongoing portion of it. So they're able to reach out and say, hey, we need the mobile crisis team to come out, and they deal with the mental health issues that are associated with it after the notification. It's like the ongoing thing. And this is similar. Some of these groups were aware that this is going on, and they brought it up. And beyond law enforcement, it's just generally speaking, if there's something that's going on or somebody's in that, they can reach out to the mobile crisis team and get that immediate mental health care. It goes with social work, it's everything. It really does. And these people are trained social workers, they're trained therapists by the lead of a psychologist. So I'm hoping that gains some traction with you doing this here, and that we can get those people on board, because they even work within the school systems, and they go out there and deal with
It would be
children.
tremendous. I think, thank you for raising that. So that's a model that we've had discussions with our EMS partners about for some years now. We've actually applied for 3 different grants over the past couple of years to try to get funding to support rolling out a mobile crisis response team. Thus far, we have not been awarded funding through grants to support a mobile crisis response team. I believe Calvert County is rolling out a model. Their health department is working with their local law enforcement, I believe, to roll out a model of that, and there are several others in the state. I believe Charles County also has some level of an effort. I don't know if they're still funded to continue that, but they were receiving a grant to do that for some years.
I know there's a big volunteer contingency on some of this from some of the groups, and a lot of them are either in their clinical phases or they're dealing, the people that are going out with the therapists that are volunteering.
Yeah.
So there's lots of models. I know it could work. It's working elsewhere. It's just a matter of getting the community buy-in and the support, and I think we can do it.
And incredibly effective. And so of the 3, behavioral health crisis stabilization services, and we'll talk more about this hopefully in another couple weeks when we do our brief out, but that model, that phrase has within it 3 arms. So one is having a call line, a crisis hotline, essentially. 2 is having a mobile crisis response unit. And 3 is having some kind of housed facility that people can go to, like a kind of a living room kind of model of a facility where people can go and get stabilized, get evaluated, get linked into community and treatment services as they need it.
It's the gateway, as I like to call it.
That's a great way to describe
They are
that.
the key holders to the entire system, essentially.
Right, and we're envisioning that our model here, to be most efficient and to be most comprehensive, would also offer an access point for primary care for individuals who are underserved.
Very nice.
So I'd like to, the 3 of us are going to switch out, and I'd like to invite Mr. Nicholson and Mr. Rocky up to talk about what's developing or on the horizon that can be, that we're really excited about. Wait, I might just move over. If you want to take these 2, maybe I'll sit here.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Brewster. Great to see you all. It's been a while. Do I keep talking, Dr. Brewster? Or do you have to?
It's all you. If you want to go to the next slide, please.
Commissioners, down from Baltimore is Chris Rocky. Early morning for him. I'm very pleased to have his partnership. I need to step back to 2001 for a moment. And can you hear me all right, Commissioners?
Speak into the microphone.
Yes, there you go. Back in 2001, the Housing Authority was in the business of providing a community facility for health and family. That is now known as the Dr. J. Patrick Family Center, located just off of Great Mills Road. 2001 put the Housing Authority into community facility services to meet community needs. Stepping into our 2021 period, in partnership with the Health Department and PNC, the former branch PNC on Great Mills Road, which closed August of 2020, has been a community effort by many partners, led by PNC, to look at how that branch building can serve our community. And at this juncture, we're here today to say that from a COVID testing vaccination, and a behavioral health hub focus, this 2-story, 6,200 square foot facility is, may I say, Chris, is being donated, fully donated by the corporate leadership of PNC, and this has taken many weeks of discussions, collaborations with our health department and other community partners. But this is a major facility asset that exists already on a known campus. Our commissioners, with our sheriff's department, have scaled up, improved the community-based policing office on Great Mills Road, and existing faith-based churches there. Having this resource to be renovated, planned, and designed is going to be in my view, a benefit from a physical asset to a service delivery asset. And Chris, let me ask you to take over, please.
Sure. Thank you, Dennis. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me. As Dennis spoke about, we began talking about this last summer. And really, what is the best use? What does the community need if we're able to provide adaptive reuse for that building? And a lot of things were discussed early on. As Dennis said, it was community-wide. It was NAACP, faith-based leaders, community leaders convening about what services should be provided. So we fast forward to sort of the fall with the ramp up of COVID, and in walks Dr. Brewster. And here we are with a pandemic that's beginning to get a little out of control. So we determined that the highest and best need for the short term would be vaccination and mass vaccination and testing site in Lexington Park, which, as you heard in our presentation, there's been a disparate impact in our low-income minority communities. So we thought our facility located in the heart of that community would be a perfect location. Long-term, as Dennis mentioned, the behavioral health hub, the ability to help individuals with workforce, with first-time home buyers opportunities, with entrepreneurship training. Our bankers will help activate and volunteer in that facility post-COVID to really help our residents achieve, economic empowerment and build assets and wealth in that low-income community. So we are thrilled to have an opportunity to partner with the county and provide the opportunity to donate our property for such a good use.
Listen, that's really a wonderful donation, sir. I mean, thank you very much.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
That could be a good early voting center for Lexington Park. I mean, I like the idea of behavioral health hub, but that is located right where we have a great need. Mm-hmm. And your donation is quite generous and quite appreciated. Thank you,
sir.
I know this is, Mr. Nicholson, I've had this discussion for some time now. The NAACP, a few other organizations have looked into opportunities there. And I think that from PNC, we appreciate the donation. I think that the behavioral health hub that Dr. Brewster is describing really fits the needs of that community down there based upon the slide presentation she just gave for, the need for the community down there. And, the faith-based church I go to 2 doors down the street, so I'm pretty familiar with, what goes on there and that particular part of the neighborhood. So I do want to thank you. I think that the Behavioral Health Hub is a great idea.
Thank you.
When Mr. Nicholson said it was donated, I know what the particulars are on the financial end. I'm just really, that's amazing. It truly is. I mean, I wish we could get up, shake hands, and because I'll tell you, I've seen gestures before, but something to this magnitude with this great of an impact is amazing. I really don't know how to thank you enough on this one. I really don't. This is huge for the county. It's huge for that area and everything. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, sir.
It's our community commissioners, and PNC has established that they want to remain, even after the donation, in providing community services. And also from an banking educational and banking service, the ATM will stay in that location.
Oh.
It's a known location. It's a walkable to place. And we hope that as years progress, this is going to be a viable and a very aesthetic appealing campus at that section of Great Mills Road. Dr. Brewster, do you want to?
Yeah, I just, again, can't say enough to express gratitude to Mr. Rocky and his whole team at PNC Bank. I mean, this is just an absolutely incredibly generous effort to support not just health, but to support, so much of what our community needs and what this, in particular, this community would benefit from. And I also want to speak with, to Mr. Nicholson. I mean, my kids run around calling him Dennis the Wizard for a reason, because he's really been amazing in orchestrating this, and certainly in maintaining this relationship with PNC Bank that is being that will be incredibly beneficial for our whole community, for our whole county. And so thank you both for that incredible and extraordinary effort. We're really excited about the use of this facility. It has an existing drive-through that we are going to be renovating to make it safer for both pedestrians and drivers to go through and get COVID testing, to use it as a site for COVID vaccine. Because it's a site that's walkable, we could use it for that purpose. And then, of course, in the long term, to hopefully build out and implement that ultimate vision of a behavioral health hub that our Equity Task Force has presented to you already. So thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, I came up with 2 words. I really and truly am moved by this, but it isn't a building. Mm-hmm. To me, what you donated was hope and opportunity here. And that, to me, is the biggest thing. I really cannot tell you, that's truly amazing. Sometimes you just lose faith in corporate America. You lose faith in the system. You lose faith in things. But then, it comes back around. You get that little glimmer at the end of the tunnel, and you're like, you know what? We're not so bad after all, or they're not so bad, either way, but wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure PMC is going to keep their banking services in St. Mary's County going.
Oh, yes.
I know you are.
We'll still have a branch about 2 miles away.
Right. I know you did. Yeah, and that's very good.
Yeah.
Keep you there. Now, Mr. Nicholson, you mentioned something about career type of training, workforce development, things like that. I hope you're working with the Tri-County Council, because we have quite a bit of stuff there in Lexington Park right now, concerned with that, so that you're not duplicating too much effort with everybody. But
yes, Commissioner, and one of our earlier partners, BJ Hall from NAACP president, has also had those conversations.
Yeah.
So we
want to make sure we got, you're either providing additional services or at least working with the Tri-County Council on some of the services that are already provided in that area. And definitely it's welcome to help anybody, especially those that don't quite know how to do a resume and things like that. It's a very valuable service that we can provide to people that they can move on in life. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, we thank you, and we shall be back.
Good enough. I'm sure you will.
No doubt.
Keep bringing gifts like this in.
We know Mr. Nicholson's face already. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your company and what they did for us. Thank you.
If you could wait, I'd love to talk to the outside too, Mr. Rocky. We're so appreciative that you came all the way down here for this morning. Commissioner, that's it for the Board of Health update for today. And we're looking forward to coming back as an Equity Task Force in a couple weeks to give you a summary of everything that the task force has been working on.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Brewster, very much. Good, valuable information today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
All right. I move to adjourn as the St. Mary's County Board of Health and reconvene as the Commissioners of St. Mary's County.
Second.
First, second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much, Dr. Brewster. Okay, well, I'll turn right over to County Administrator time.
Thank you, Commissioner President Guy. First on the County Administrator agenda are your draft meeting agendas. For March 9th, you have 2 proclamations, National Athletic Training Month and AmeriCorps Week. Also, 2 decision requests from Department of Land Use and Growth Management. One is the proposed amendment to the Solar Task Force temporary moratorium on utility-scale solar projects. And the second is a proposed amendment to change the critical area overlay from resource conservation area, RCA, to intensely developed area, IDA, for the Real Food Studio project. You have your weekly legislative updates from the Office of the County Attorney. You adjourn your business meeting that morning and reconvene at 1:30 p.m. with your budget work session from the Department of Finance. The following week is March 16th. You begin first thing with the St. Mary's County Board of Health. You have 3 proclamations: Public Health Week and Hero, Social Work Month, and Equal Pay Day. You also have the decision scheduled from the Department of Land Use and Growth Management for the proposed amendment to the official zoning maps of St. Mary's County to delete the existing 1,000-foot critical area boundary line and replace with the new critical area boundary line from the statewide base map as required by House Bill 1253. You also have your weekly legislative updates from the Office of the County Attorney. You adjourn your morning business meeting, reconvene at 1:30 that afternoon with the Department of Finance for your budget work session. For this morning's County Administrator budget items, you begin with 7B, Sheriff's Office with Safe to Learn School Overwatch Program grant budget increase. I believe Lottie Bell, Fiscal Manager, is joining us WebEx, and it looks like Chief Butler and other folks from Sheriff's Office is on as well. Ms. Bell?
Good morning, Commissioners and Dr. Bridget. Captain Hall and I are here because the St. Mary's County Public Schools has increased the funding provided to the Sheriff's Office for the School Watch Program grant by $10,987, thus revising the total grant to $146,012 for overtime costs for this program to be extended by June 30th. Today, we request approval of a budget amendment to increase the budget authority for the Safe to Learn School Watch Program grant. Do you have any questions of us?
I move to approve the budget amendment to increase the funding for the Safe to Learn School Overwatch Grant Project OT 2002 by the amount of $10,987 for overtime-related costs to monitor and improve safety and security measures in place at St. Mary's County Public Schools, and authorize the Commission President to execute the related documents.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you, Commissioners. And item C is also from the Sheriff's Office with the federal fiscal year 2022 Maryland Highway Safety Grant applications. Ms. Bell?
So the highway safety grants are recurring and require no county match. These grants will cover overtime and fringe for Maryland Highway Safety Initiative. They are included in our FY22 budget request at a lower amount. If approved as requested, a budget amendment would be submitted at the award stage to increase the budget, if not adjusted during the budget process. You have any questions?
When you say no county match, do you anticipate there could be some if it's comes out less than if it's awarded less than you think?
No, sir. We would just adjust our initiatives to
Whatever
be
whatever
within
you
the
get.
amount.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Correct. Yes. You're welcome.
Well, I move to approve the Maryland Highway Safety Grant application for FFY 2022 on behalf of the Sheriff's Office for the total amount of $23,030 and authorize the Sheriff's Office staff to sign and submit the related documents electronically.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you, Commissioners. And thank you, Ms. Bell, and the Sheriff's Office. Item D is from Finance with Metcom for the Maryland Water Quality Financing Loan County Resolution Approval. Jeanette Cudmore will introduce the item, CFO, and George Erickson, Executive Director, Metcom, presenting this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Thank you, Dr. Bridget. I
afternoon.
have George Erickson here, and we're requesting approval of the county resolution to provide a full faith and credit on Metcom's Maryland Water Quality Financing Administration loan, authorizing the issuance and sale of the general obligation infrastructure bonds for the St. Clement Shores Water System, Phase 2. Capital improvements project in the amount not to exceed $3.6 million. County resolution was prepared by county's bond counsel, Cheryl Guth. Resolution and is signed for legal sufficiency. George now has the details.
Thank you for the introduction, Ms. Cudmore. As the commissioners are aware, we've got a water line replacement project down in St. Clement Shores. There's a lot of 4-inch galvanized pipe that was built before 1950. are in the early 50s. Its age is obviously well beyond its useful life. Phase 1 is located on the west side of Lady Baltimore Avenue as you drive down Lady Baltimore Avenue. That phase is now completed. It was a $3.4 million project. It replaced about 10,000 feet of water main. Phase 2, which is why we're here today, is on the east side of Lady Baltimore Avenue. It was previously presented to the board as a loan application back in January. It was actually January 15th, 2019, and you heard that correctly. We were here before you this past January for a loan application, and I think Commissioner Hewitt, you asked if we would be coming back. Now you can see the timing. These loans take there's a lot of lead time on these loans. They're very difficult to get, but here's the good news about these loans. They don't process the loans until the bids are in hand. What that does is it means they're shovel ready. That's the first thing. It means you can draw down on the loans quickly because you're ready to award. The third thing that's important about these is it keeps you obviously from borrowing too early because you have the bids in hand. What that also requires us to do, and it's a process that we've taken on ourselves, is we front fund the design and then pay ourselves back through the loans for the design. That ensures that we can get the bids done in a timely fashion. You don't want to get a loan for the bids, for the design and the construction because you've got that lead time there. So we have a project now that's been bid. We provided our conditional award on October 8th of this year. All that paperwork is up at the state being reviewed now. It still has to go to the Board of Public Works for approval. We still have to close on the loan. That's going to be in another couple of months. The difficulty about these loans, and the other good thing again, is the loans are typically at interest rates less than 2%. Which is really, really good. Much more favorable than the DHCD loans. So we really try to get MDE loans first. And as you can see from the loan status summary that we provided you in your packages, all of the projects are either being closed out or under construction because that's the nature of these loans. So this would be the next project on the list. The downside, of course, is that the process is extremely lengthy. And it's very difficult because we have to ask our vendors who bid to hold their prices until the award is actually made, not only at our board level, a resolution passed for you to back the project in full faith and credit, but the Board of Public Works to approve it and a loan application to approve. The worst case scenario is about 6 months from the time the bids are open. That is a long time to ask people to hold their bids.
Especially nowadays with the price increase of raw materials really going up.
And if there are equitable adjustments that need to be made, because let's say the price of fuel, for example, that is one now that we're looking at, those can be made. But the state has actually done pretty well. They've adjusted to COVID just as we have as well, and their processing is much quicker. So we expect the loan to actually close within the next couple of months as opposed to 3, 4, 5 months from now. We are here today to ask for you to approve a resolution. It has been, as Jeanette presented to you, approved by your bond counsel. We're required by law to not only get your concurrence for the loan itself, but also we obtain your backing in full faith and credit. In the event, of course, we default, which the Metropolitan Commission has never defaulted since 1965 and obviously has no intentions of defaulting. But nonetheless, the law requires.
We'll back you. We'll back you.
We really appreciate it. We really do. And that is the substance of why we're here today, Commissioners. And if you have any questions, certainly we'd be happy to answer.
I got a couple comments and then some questions for you. First off, thank you very much for this. This is St. Clements Wastewater Treatment Plant. I know a couple of us, I know I've been on this thing for several years now trying to get that thing upgraded and MDE, and we've getting a lot of help from Governor Hogan and his staff. And your staff, too, has done a great job. This idea of not borrowing the money till you know what the project cost and forward funding the A&E, good work. That's good work, Mr. Erickson. Now, what I do have to ask you, though, is at some point in time, we're going to expand that plant and we're going to have additional EDUs available. And what's been one of the requests of people in my constituency is that we look for some kind of a grant that extends a trunk line down Rosebud, down that to Brenton Bay Estates, for all those houses that are right there on the water, very close in-ground systems that are failing. And so maybe that's something that you can look at that in the meantime I'll use, that we can maybe look for some MDE grants or some kind of grants that would help us get those places hooked up at a cheaper price. Or maybe break it down such that if we know we have 140 down there, I think there's a number, something like that, that they could split the cost. So I thank you for what you're doing. You guys are doing a great job with this. It's taken a while, as you say, but we are seeing progress. So if you can help us out with maybe getting those people down there on Brenton Bay Estates, that Rosebud area, hooked up a little bit cheaper, appreciate that.
Well, two comments. First, this is the water line, not the sewer, which is fine.
I know.
But the comments are well taken. I would say this, that one, we'll look for grants. It's a good idea. Bay restoration funds, we've talked to the health department, they can be combined. So anybody on any given roadway, for example, if all of you commissioner lived on one roadway and you were all eligible for up to $20,000, again, it depends on your income levels, but that's 20, 40, 60, that's $100,000 that could go towards a connection. And if that wasn't sufficient, we have a loan program through Chapter 113. We revised the law last year that has loan programs through the Metropolitan Commission at a very extremely low interest rate that could supplement the Bay Restoration Fund. So if MDE, it's easy to say, let's look for a grant, and then tell the residents, I'm sorry, there are no grants.
Right.
We got the backup plan, and we think it's a viable backup plan, and we expect to see some additional connectivity down there through
We'll
those
see a
loans.
lot of interest in hooking up.
I think so. I really do.
Thank you.
Very good comments. Appreciate it, sir.
Move to approve County Resolution 2021-14 for St. Mary's County Metropolitan Commission's Maryland Water Quality Financing Administration Loan for federal fiscal year 2021 and state fiscal year 2023 capital project financial assistance through the Maryland Department of Environment in the amount of $3,687,434 in accordance with Section 113-6.A of the Code of St. Mary's County.
Second.
Have a first and second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much.
And happy birthday, is that correct? Is that a yes?
Don't bring it up. Don't bring it up. But thank you. Yes, you're right. You're right.
Thank you, Commissioners. And item E is from the Department of Recreation and Parks with the Pandemic Relief Grant Funds, Maryland State Department of Education application. Mr. Shepard, Director, presenting this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Shepard.
Good morning to all. Yeah, we do have a strong opportunity here from the Maryland Department of Education, these pandemic relief grant funds for our child care center at the Hollywood Recreation Center. That, as you can see and read, that we've had about 24 students daily there during this time of the COVID pandemic when the schools are closed, and they were there part of all-day care for their parents, but yet accessing school virtually. We're very proud of that and what was going on in the comments from our parents. So with this pandemic relief grant fund, we hope to gain approval today, then we'll apply for that and to get reimbursed for some of the things that were regarding safety and sanitization at that site.
Good. Any questions, Commissioner?
I move to approve and authorize Recreation and Parks to submit an online application for child care pandemic relief grant funds to the Maryland State Department of Education for the purpose of financially supporting the all-day school-age care program that operates at the Hollywood Recreation Center.
Second.
I have a first and second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Shepard. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioners. And item F is from the Department of Human Resources with the LoSAP 2020 Benefit Certification. Ms. Pratson presenting this morning. Good morning.
Again, my wife's impacted by low SAP. She did get her 51 points, so I'll recuse myself from this discussion.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As you're aware, the St. Mary's County Length of Service Award Program is a retirement program for members of volunteer fire departments, rescue squads, and advanced life support units. The program was originally established through resolution in 1979 and has been amended several times since. The most recent changes were made in 2020 when Chapter 181-5 of the St. Mary's County Code was amended, providing that for calendar year 2020, 25 LoSAP points shall be awarded to all volunteers who earned 50 points in 2019. Each year, the Board of Directors of each volunteer fire department, rescue squad, and ALS unit certifies a list of volunteers who have qualified for credit from the previous year.
The LoSAP Executive Committee of the County Fire Board and Rescue Squad Association in turn reviews and certifies these lists. At the end of the process, approval of each certified eligibility list is requested from the Commissioners of St. Mary's County, and that is the purpose for the appointment today.
Move to approve and then to certify the eligibility list of individuals qualifying for the 2020 Length of Service Awards, LoSAP Service Credit, and authorize Commission President to sign the related documents.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you very
Ms.
much,
Preston.
Commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioners, and this completes County Administrator time.
Okay, with that completed, we'll move right into Commissioner time. We'll start with Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's been a relatively busy morning for everybody. I want to thank SMECO and all our partners for, electrical vehicles are getting to be the phase of the day or mode of the day, so we're going to have some electrical charging facilities around here. Second is that the critical area 1,000-foot buffer. There are a lot of people calling us and discussing this issue. So I went back and looked in 2008 and how that vote went, and at that time, Senator Dyson and Delegate Bohannon voted for the buffer, and Delegates O'Donnell and Wood voted against it. So that tells you sort of how far back it goes. But I do think that the suggestion that was made is that we go back to the state and ask for some little grandfathering and some comfort would be very, very good for us. We had a very good briefing from Dr. Bruce this morning. First, on the ability for us to get the vaccines out there and the progress that St. Mary's County is making. Again, we are one of the leaders in the state in getting the vaccines out to the people. As it was noted, the health department has delivered over 80% of the vaccines in the state, but with Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and now this morning Merck getting involved in production, I think that we're going to have a lot of vaccines coming down here, and get out the vax is a very important thing, and we'll look forward to that. But more importantly, recognizing the behavioral health hub in Lexington Park. I've had these discussions with Mr. Hall and Mr. Nicholson and in the very beginning PNC Bank, and I think it's a great addition to serving that community down there, and I'm glad that PNC was able to make the donation. I know Dr. Brewster said there's grants coming in to help pay for that, and I think that tied to what Commissioner Guy said about tying into the Tri-County Council Center down there in Shangri-La Drive will be a great complement to Lexington Park. So those are the big things. But this afternoon we have a budget hearing, and this is round one, or really round one of the requests. So everyone sort of doesn't have great expectations going in. I did a lot of numbers over the weekend, and on summary, with the requests versus what we have, we're about $10 million off already. So I would sort of tell everybody out there, please don't think you're not going to be disappointed at the end, because for the requests that are out there and the money we have, we're not going to be able to satisfy everybody. So let's just use that as a pretense going into these discussions that we have a very difficult time ahead. And as importantly, we have no idea what Annapolis is going to do to us. They're at the halfway point right now, plus 2 days. So there's a lot of time up there for Annapolis to come up with some unfunded mandates to cover a lot of the costs that they're creating for us along the way, too. So with that, thank you very much, and I hope you have a good day.
John, you got it.
All right. Well, Commissioner Morgan, there's one thing that you highlighted there. It's unfunded mandates, and I'll add taxes, because that's what Annapolis is definitely good at, pushing down more unfunded mandates and taxes. So we have no clue what's going to happen with that. We are coming up to a budget work session, one of many, as Commissioner Morgan stated. You look at the numbers, you look at COVID-19 and the effect it's had across the country. I think there's mandates that we need to do that are already in the budget or previously planned from the budget. But other than that, I don't have a very, looking at the numbers, running the numbers, I don't see a lot of these requests being granted. It's going to be tough, and I think there's going to have to be some give and take, or actually more give than anything coming into this budget year, so we're prepared for the fallout in the next 2 fiscal years, which is evidently going to happen. I would like to thank PNC again, and Commissioner Morgan. I know he was involved in the the beginning talks with the PNC Bank, being that it's his district and he's very involved down there with trying to get resources, especially things like this. To me, the behavioral health hub is important because we do have a mental health crisis in our country, in our state, in our county. It's there. When you look at how things are going, if this behavioral hub is there and we can get the mobile crisis team up and running, there's likely to be a lot more things addressed, our veterans, the mental health that goes along with that, and it can hopefully avoid law enforcement contact. And that's what I hope. I hope that what we can do is get people help prior to it reaching the critical mass that a police officer has to get involved. Unfortunately, that's, sometimes just the way it goes regardless of what you do and what you try. But at least if we have a mechanism in place that can help, even if it's at that time of critical mass, I think that is so important for the individuals that need mental health help and go from there. The system that the state has in place with emergency petitions, I tell you, I believe it's just lackluster at best. And you go in, and within a few hours, you're usually gone, and you're back out. You truly don't get any help. It just alleviates that critical moment that's there. And I've seen it time and time again. I bring somebody in, and by the time I'm leaving the hospital, the doctor's discharging them. And it's like, why did we even do what we do? And bring it here. We need to get that care straightened out. So this morning, I realized one of our staff members came in and said, hey, our cell phones, because I had to switch out my phone, and the phone's old. But what we're doing is we're not recycling these phones due to various different reasons. Well, these phones, because we have a nonprofit policy in county government, they're able to dial 911. So I reached out to the Center for Family Advocacy, and I spoke to the county administrator and said, hey, look, we have these phones sitting there. They're always in need of emergency phones for domestic violence. They don't have to dial anything but 911. And it looks like that is starting to happen, where they're going to send over an email, and whatever phones we have are going to be able to go to domestic violence victims and or their family members that need to be able to call 911 to get the police there in that meantime. As well as the county, I don't know how many are left. We do have desktop computers for nonprofits. I think this is a great time for you to go ahead and reach out if you're a certified nonprofit. We do have those computers available. Maybe perfect timing with the fact school is starting back up. Maybe there's a nonprofit that works with schools where a kid needs a computer. There's so many different things that the county government here can help you with. So please reach out. Do we have, beyond the email, Dr. Bridget, do we have a point of contact for that?
For
the computers?
The donations?
Yeah.
It goes straight to the IT department. They generate that. So it goes into Bob Kelly's office.
Okay, so you go to our website, go to the IT section, and you can reach out, and it goes into his office, and they'll start all the paperwork right there, and hopefully get you some computers, and we'll get those phones out. So I appreciate that. I think it's going to be a huge impact for our community. Thank you.
Eric.
Very good. Well, it's March. Feels like it was just March a year ago, and that March a year ago lasted a full year. So I'm calling this March 2.0. But along with it being March, social media was lit up this morning. Spring is coming. People were hearing the frogs, the peepers last night and this morning. It's incredible. It's wonderful. Children are going back to school if they want to. The schools are opening back up. It's good. It's also Women's History Month. This morning we presented a proclamation honoring Women's History Month, and that's a good thing. So happy Women's History Month. Every year, our Commission for Women puts on a banquet and an awards ceremony, but last year they weren't able to do it because of COVID. This year they're doing their first ever virtual symposium for Women's History Month. That'll be March 18th on their Facebook page. You'll be able to just watch it there. So definitely take advantage of that. And related to Women's History Month, last Friday I was able to attend an outdoor event in Leonardtown. Leonardtown declared it Mull Dyer Day. If you're from the county, you probably know who Mull Dyer was. If you're not from the county originally and you don't know who Mull Dyer was, you should look her up and learn about her. They moved a rock. It's a fascinating story, and it's a very important story in our county's history, so check it out. It's a really good thing, and it looks really nice where they moved it to. It looks really nice. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Mike?
Thank you, Commissioner President. Budget season. The good news is there's good news and bad news. Well, on Friday, we found out our revenue distribution for this period was higher than we anticipated. That's great news. I keep saying that, our revenues are running better than this commissioner expected, and I still haven't seen the effects of the COVID on our revenue stream. And heck, if we don't get one, that's going to be a good thing. But also, I'd like to talk about, I'm our county's representative to the OPEB and LoSAP boards. The commissioners do not have a commissioner on the SORP board, but this last Thursday and Friday were the quarterly meetings for all three. I was allowed to attend the SORP meeting in the audience as a participant, not a participant, but as a spectator. And the point is that we had gone to new financial advisors about 4 months ago. We put it out for bid, got another company, Marquette, very impressive group, does a lot of counties in Maryland. And what they bring with them is a broad background, and they have a lot under management. What they found out was our SORP program was being riddled with hidden fees to the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, what we hope to be able to do is that the SORP board will ask the person from that financial group to identify those hidden fees. It was amazing. They could charge like 1% on the first 5% of the return, and after it went above 5%, they got 12.5% incentive fee of anything above. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the good news is we'll be able to avoid those going forward. We're restructuring our strategy to make us more nimble, to take advantage of quicker changes in the stock market or financial products that's available to us. But the bottom line is both SORP and OPEB are close to 100%, not 100% funded. That's an excellent place to be. And when you get to where you want to be funded, then you want to make sure that you can stay there and that you don't set yourself up for risk. So the county is looking in that direction and hopefully will be moving there. LoSAP, on the other hand, it's at $5.9 million, and it's supposed to be between 17 and 22. Point is, we've got a ways to go. We're about a third of the way funded on that, but we're doing a good job. But as we all know, these things will cost money later, so we got to keep an eye on them. Now, senior centers. People have reached out and said, hey, look, try to get a relaxation of the senior center activities because we have vaccines. Dale Taylor, wonderful lady, Patricia Armstrong, another wonderful person, all the people who have reached out. Great outreach to help get those senior centers open. And with the library opening right next to it, co-joined to it, makes sense that maybe we can. I did say maybe we could request the governor to do a relaxation. But what we heard today from Dr. Brewster in the health department, it may be premature to do that. We need a little bit more time to see this curve dropping down and making sure our infection rates are coming down. And we got all these variants running around, whether they're the UK or the South African or whatever the variant is, Brazilian. There's all these variants going on, so it's still too early to open our senior centers, in our opinion. And lastly, the electric charging stations. You know, I came from small business and was primarily, my dad started a small gas station in 1964 in Bushwood. And it's always been about fossil fuel, always been about, regular and high test and diesel and this and that. These electric charging stations are coming to be a bigger and bigger thing. And like I said earlier, Sheetz down in Lexington Park will be taking out half of their gas pumps and replacing them with electric charging stations. It's kind of like the wave of the future. It's the way to go, and it's great we're going in that direction. And it's good we have one over here at the library in Leonardtown because it is going to be a lot cheaper to charge your battery and pay to have that recharging done than it is to buy the fossil fuel. And it will save, hopefully, our ozone or whatever is filing up in the atmosphere with the carbon footprint. It's all steps in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I suppose you've already heard, yeah, today is my birthday, unfortunately. Like getting old, number one, but number two, getting 74 makes it even worse. But I am feeling very good. I will say that I've been through some numerous things here since this COVID thing happened. Number one, I actually was diagnosed with it in August. I have had both my vaccinations. Unfortunately, I had a partial eye transplant in my right eye a couple weeks ago. They think it was probably part of the COVID problem because it started bothering me about 2 weeks after I was diagnosed with COVID. They haven't come back with a positive yet. They examined the tissue. Right now, it's uncertain. They had to send it out for further testing. I should know by next week, of course. They told me that. But these are so many. They said they've had a lot of problem with people losing some of these transplants because of the COVID. So it probably was. I just don't know yet. But I'm glad now they were able to transplant new tissue in. Thank the donor who donated the eye. And thank Wilmer Eye Institute at Johns Hopkins Hospital for doing the transplant. My vision is cleared up rather well. It's very good. So I thank all these great people out there. We also celebrated my brother's birthday, Pat, who's about in the middle, 70 years old. Sunday. I have to say great things about either our medication, our doctors, and hospitals in this area, because I presently have 5 other brothers. We're all between 63 and 74. And my history in my family, but the guy's side of the family, great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, only one really got to be past 60 years old. So it's fascinating that all 5 of my brothers and myself are over the 60-year group and doing well. And I have to say it's got to be because of the sciences, medical treatment. I have had no problem taking the COVID, both the Pfizer 1 and 2 vaccination. I certainly hope it will prevent me from getting kind of serious illness in the future here. But I encourage everybody to go check. If you can't get it on our website, go check with your local pharmacy, both the Walgreens and all of them out there that probably got it now, is to go ahead and check to see if they've got it. 'Cause I think a vaccination is paramount in us getting back to some normalcy in our life. If you don't do that, we're going to be fighting this thing for another year. And we don't need to do that. We need to get back, and society needs to get back to some kind of normalcy. So please do. I want to thank all those who work at this PNC Bank. A great opportunity. We thank the bank services for donating this, and it'll be a valuable asset down there in the southern part and down in the Lexington Park area. Thank you very much for doing all this. And seniors, please hold on. I missed the senior center myself. I used to go down there twice a week and work out at, and I haven't been able to do that. And I missed that. I've got the COVID curve building around my midsection, and I need to do something about that.
COVID 10.
So yeah, that's right. So anyway, with all that said, please come and listen to us during our 1:30 budget work session. And with that all said, we adjourn.